Everybody. Hi,
Hi,
everybody.
everybody.
Now you got it.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Thank goodness we're online
hi,
because Nick has
Liz,
been saying
Tanya,
that
Dana.
over and
Dana,
over
you're
and
there.
over and over and over and over again.
Oh, look, there's some bloke called Nick there. Matt.
Oh, shoot. Hold on.
Funting Brame.
Hold on.
Mate.
Technical difficulties. There we go. It helps when you pause
David.
YouTube.
Owen Finnegan.
I would just pop out that chat and
James.
close that window completely, and then you don't. Well, it doesn't matter if it's
Hi,
paused. Just
James.
don't.
It's paused. Yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah, but I think I'm not sure, but if it's still downloading stuff, video, even if you have it paused, like buffering it. But if you pop out the chat and then you close the window that has a video in it, then there's no chance that it could be doing any of that.
And
But it won't close up my chat. Let's try it out. Well, it did not. Okay,
No.
perfect. I never knew that.
Yeah, you pop out the chat and then you can close the other window.
I popped out the chat for a long time.
Oh, you've been popping out the chat, huh?
I have been popping out the chat for a
love
long
the way
time.
you pop out your chat.
Yes, you do, don't you? Especially when I'm distracted.
Let's see. Richard Adams is a contributor. I guess I can do a quick coffee fund contribution segment. Won't take very long. And what time is it over there, Nick?
Oh, forever. I've just gone 10 o'clock.
Okay. Long day?
Well, I've got my brother staying with me from Canada. And
is he wearing you out?
Yeah, he is.
All right.
I had a bottle of wine over dinner.
Oh,
I would like a bottle of wine.
Bottle of wine.
Bottle of
wine.
Bottle
When
of wine.
you gonna let me get?
I like to put anything in my mouth except for water and bone broth. I haven't done anything else but that.
It's a bit hard living your entire life off bone broth.
I haven't had anything to eat since Sunday.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I'm doing marvelous. I worked out at the gym for 2.5 hours today. I went shopping. I've been running errands, and I am ready to run a marathon right about now.
Well, wait until we're finished for the show before you run your marathon.
I'll try. I'll try to.
Okay.
And we'd like you back in time for the next show in 3 days, if you could manage it.
WAPG. It's the airline.
Well, look what I have. Aha.
Oh,
I
a
actually
box.
got it. A box.
You've got a cardboard box. Well done, sir.
Yep. I've got the iPhone XX Max.
Wow.
10X.
S.
No,
It's called the
it's
XS.
X, but you're supposed to pronounce it 10. 10X Max.
The
or
10
10S
Max.
10S Max.
10X. 10.
10S. I don't know. It's just too complicated.
10S Max.
I think.
Yeah. I'm very happy so far.
Was the gym closed, Dana? Oh, the Neville Bounds is up to his normal tricks and stunts.
Well, I still actually am still in my gym clothes. I haven't changed. I've been running around all day.
Okay. Hello, everyone. We'll get this thing started very shortly. It's just going to be feedback pretty much. We'll just do a quick catch up, talk about what we're doing, and then we'll do a quick coffee fund segment. Maybe I'll do some feedback first, and then we'll stop and pause for the coffee fund segment, and then we'll continue more feedback. And then we're just going to keep going until we're all just about can't stand it anymore, and we're tired, and we're not going to do it anymore. So I don't expect this is going to be a 3-hour show.
No.
Yeah. So this is just a little something extra, something. All right. How does it say? Sounds like a condom brand. Oh, okay. Host link. I just got your link. I mean your message, Nick, on this computer.
I had to go a very long way. So.
Oh yeah, I guess all across the Atlantic it must be clogged up a little bit, the line.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I don't want to see that anymore.
Talking of that, just sent some feedback into opposing bases.
Did you now?
You know, when I was heading into Atlanta last trip, we'd been planned well to the west of Florence. and we got a reroute. As soon as we entered Boston's airspace, I crossed the border into the States. They gave us a reroute, taking us right over Florence, and I was just wondering why the hell they would do that. After my planning department took pains to take us well clear of it, why would then someone reroute us slap bang over the middle of it?
Well, they're not in an airplane. They don't care. Turbulence is going to affect them.
Yeah, but I'm just curious for how flow control works. I mean,
I don't know. That's a good question.
How do they make a decision when you've taken pains to avoid bad weather to go, to hell with that. Just go through the middle.
Just say,
we don't care.
I'm going to use my captain's emergency authority, and I'm not going to do that.
Well, it's not like you get an option, because it's not like, would you be willing to accept a reroute?
No.
It's, we've got a reroute for you. This is where you're going.
We do not accept that reroute.
Well,
I spit in your face.
I empty my nose at you.
Not doing it. Sorry.
That's a good question, though. Maybe they'll come up with a good answer. And I have a feeling they're probably going to do another one of those
slopey-shouldered.
Talk about what we talked about.
Yeah.
Because of the Air India thing, when I was doing the editing, I'm thinking, I know for sure that they're going to say something about this.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay. I'm supposed to be setting up my recorder and stuff. Hang on.
Yes.
I got 6
subtle
minutes.
Oh my goodness.
Subtle hint.
Yeah.
7 minutes already and counting.
Okay, hang on. I'm going to have to do something different here. I got to do a new multi-track session because I didn't delete all the stuff from the
it kept me busy, Nev. All those ride reports.
341 point.
It was a hard job fitting them in between all the ones from Delta.
We don't do that anymore, or you shouldn't be. We have a flight weather viewer app that tells us all that stuff.
Oh.
Oops.
Your chat froze. Is that a pseudonym for something? I don't know, Tanya. What's that all about?
I can tell you're tired and have had a little bit to drink, Nick.
Slurring my words, sir.
Yeah, I've seen you like this before.
I've heard him like this before. So I had to turn my ceiling fan off because with this new fantastic microphone that I have, I can hear the hum. So I just turned on the air conditioning.
Okay, sorry folks for we were going to try to do this at 4, but that would have been pretty much impossible. I couldn't have gotten everything set up in time to do that. And then 5 o'clock seemed to be a better time for Steph, but apparently things are kind of going wonky at work for Steph, so she's not going to be able to make it. Sadly. What? This is going to be an interesting show, I think. Just like my first officer said as we were approaching the runway for takeoff, this is going to be an interesting flight.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Then you start to wonder what you've forgotten. Why? What have I forgot to turn on?
Yeah.
We only got one engine running? What's happening here?
Yeah, why would he say that?
Because of the weather.
Weather.
And then, of course, we went up to St. Louis and back, and we ran into weather both times. Actually, on the way back, it wasn't too bad. On the way over, we had to do some crazy deviating. This whole
crazy Ivan?
Same system that's over the top of where I am right now in Knoxville. But as I approached the gate, when I was looking at my Crew app, Dana, I noticed that the pilots, I wanted to see who I was flying with, and there was 3 of us, 2 captains and a first officer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Was that a line check?
Yeah. Shut up. And I swapped this darn.
I'm looking forward to that upcoming. It'll be probably in November for me.
This is not a schedule. This is just one of the, because we're doing that line check blitz.
Oh, the blitz. Oh.
And you know, I swapped this. I swapped my 3-day for this 4-day. Okay, I'll talk about it later. You guys are jerks.
I didn't say anything. He's doing over there.
I know.
Click.
Okay, he's a jerk.
And have been for many years.
Jerk.
So you were saying about the line check blitz, Jeff?
Oh, so I got there and Guy was sitting there and stands up, and I'm thinking, crap, a line check. Ugh. I knew I should have stopped drinking more than 3 hours before my flight today.
Oh, shush. I know you don't do that. I'm getting nervous because I've got my 6 month coming up, and I've hardly flown. That should be interesting.
Yeah. Should get out there and fly a little bit, son.
Yeah, I might put in a yellow slip next month.
Okay, I'm going to play something just to see if this is coming through. Hang on. Let's see. Something that will play for a bit.
Your quarters on.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the airline pilot guy.
Okay. Okay, it's getting me, and you all say something.
You all say something.
Hello.
Okay, good. We have your track, my track, and the music track is all recording. And so we're going to do a 3, 2, 1. So here we go. A, P, G, 3, 2, 1. Yay. All right. And and okay. Where's my Evernote? Okay, here we go. Time, Liz. Got that going? Here we go.
1712.
Thank you. That was a good year.
WAPG. It's the airline pilot guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 341.5.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the airline pilot guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from our side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Studio 914 in the Holiday Inn in Knoxville, Tennessee. Today's show was recorded on the 26th of September, 2018.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the airline pilot guy. Get you right and he's flying by. With the airline pilot guy.
In today's episode, your feedback and your feedback and your feedback and everyone else's feedback. It's a feedback extra. And no plain tail. That's it. Just feedback. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seat backs in their upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. Flight 341.5 is ready for pushback. Hello and welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. I'm Captain Jeff, a captain for a legacy carrier here in the United States of America. And joining me from his studio in England across the pond, professional photographer, former RAF RAAF fighter pilot, current captain for an international airline based in London, our favorite captain in the UK. Well, not our favorite. Yeah, he's our favorite. Captain Nick.
Hi, Jeff. Well, I'm really looking forward to this. No messing about, straight into the feedback, and nothing but fun.
Nothing but good stuff. Great answers from us. Well, answers from us. And also joining us from the north side of Atlanta in his stately southern mansion in Smyrna, Georgia, barbecue master, bourbon, Scotch, vodka connoisseur, motorcycle rider, party boat skipper, scuba diving instructor, and so many more things. Captain for a major U.S. legacy carrier, Captain Dana.
Well, hello, everybody. Nothing more important than being an APG host, though. So
There you go.
Co-host. So, absolutely. So looking forward to another, just a feedback show here, I guess, and 341.5.
Yeah. All right. Now, we can get your band to stop playing. Okay, stop playing.
You know,
All
but
right.
I have them in the background here. They're just they came over, volunteered to play today.
High energy, high something. High
High voltage.
high on something. Anyway, I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee, and just arrived a little bit ago. And it was a long day. I was just discussing a little bit of this before we went on air. I showed up to the gate this morning, and another captain was there, and I'm thinking, oh, good, I get to go home. Nah. It was a line check. Our company is doing a line check blitz this month to kind of get some of the information out there that they need to express to us, and also just to kind of take the pulse of the operation, see how we're doing operationally. And of course, I watered his eyes. Yeah, it was because he was crying. It was so bad. But went to
I
St.
highly
Louis.
doubt that, Jeff.
Went to St. Louis and back. And anyway, good flights. And here I am, short little hop from Atlanta to Knoxville. Weather is crappy. I can attest to that here in the southeastern United States. Rainy, and it's probably pretty rainy right now where you are, isn't it, Dana?
Yeah, just had some thunder boomers roll through here. So
Yeah, I'm
been
glad I wasn't
rainy
there
and
for that.
and a lot of thunderstorms going on. And thank God the lights aren't flashing though, just outside.
Yeah, I'm glad that you still have power so we can do the show.
Yeah.
All right, Nick. I understand you have some company in town.
Yeah, a couple of Canadians have just pitched up out of the blue. I tried to turn them away, but they insisted they were related to me. So it looks like they're going to have to stay for a few days before they head off on a cruise. So, yeah, my big brother is here, and his lovely wife, who works for a Canadian legacy airline. In fact, they both did. So we've got a bit of an aviation family going on here.
Yeah, you do. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, do they like your shirt? You're wearing a very nice Canadian themes shirt, aren't you?
No, this is Royal Air Force. I don't have
sorry.
I try and do something different each time. But
Yeah.
I've got plenty of my Canadian Air Force hats, which of course I sport courtesy of Liz. Thank you very much indeed, producer Liz.
Yes. Thank you, Liz.
Yes,
Thanks
thank you, Liz.
Okay.
I should have mine on today, I guess, but I didn't. I just grabbed the Boston Red Sox hat. I'm sorry. That's because we're going to the playoffs.
So, congratulations. How's the football thing going, Dana?
Oh, you just are really looking to tick me off, aren't you?
Okay, we'll move
Sunday was not a very good day.
on. You left us early on the last recorded show, which was just Sunday, just a couple of days ago. And you went to the new Mercedes-Benz, what do they call that? Stadium.
Yep.
And how was that?
It's honestly, it's a beautiful stadium, but it's kind of drab. I mean, it's just basically cinder block walls when you walk, up and down the concourses, I guess you'd call them, and just gray paint. So, but the stadium itself, nicely appointed with nice restaurants, really good concessions, fairly priced. When I say fairly, I mean fair, like not overly priced concessions for the most part. And the stadium itself rocked out. So it was fun. It was really fun to be there. We had really good seats. However, the Falcons defense couldn't do a thing to stop the offense of New Orleans, and thus they lost the game in overtime. So that's fun to watch. And then went home over to my buddy's house because the ones that my buddy that took me, his wife is from New England area and also is a Pats fan. So we watched the night game over their house, and I don't even want to talk about that one.
Okay.
But that's about as much interesting or anything interesting that I have talked about at this point.
Okay. Yeah, as I said, we just recorded on Sunday our last regular show, episode 341. This is 341.5 to designate that this is an extra show for you. If you're a patron of the show and you pay a certain amount for each episode, you will not be charged for this. This one is free. This one's on us. So thank you very much for being patrons. And while we're speaking of that, might as well just move right now.
No,
yeah.
wait.
We'll
No.
wait. We'll wait. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to find the button that says incoming messages.
And I was going to say there's something
All right. Go ahead.
very interesting that happened this week for me.
Yes.
Yes, I haven't flown yet since September 1st.
And that's supposed to be news to
that's
any of
news.
us?
I figured I'd update everybody in the fact that I still haven't flown. So I'm going to
Okay.
be quiet now.
Wow.
Wow.
All right. Here we go.
Captain, incoming message.
All right. Let's see if I can find the proper page here for the show. Seth is going to lead us off this morning. He says, "Greetings, Captain Jeff and the APG crew. I'm a new listener to the show, and I got to say, I'm only a couple of episodes in, and I'm totally hooked. I just finished APG 337, and I was quite amused to hear you bring up the suicidal EA-18 engine incident that happened several months back. Having recently served as an F-16 crew chief for 6 years, I was stationed at Nellis at the time, and coincidentally had a front row seat to the whole ordeal as it took place. A few coworkers and I were performing a handful of ops checks on the line that day, and shortly after we powered down our ground equipment, I heard what I can only describe as a mix between a sporadic engine backfire and the simulation carpet bombing occasionally witnessed at air shows. I turned around to see the aircraft aborting takeoff with the lower engine compartment erupting into flames approximately halfway down the almost 2-mile runway. As soon as it came to a full stop, the entire back half of the fuselage became engulfed in flames and smoke, but we could see the aircrew jump over the side of the canopy sill and run to safety. I'm sure the event only took a few brief moments, but time seemed to stand still as I was watching, especially since I'd never seen an incident of that magnitude in person before. Not that I enjoy watching valuable aircraft crash and burn, but I dare say that it was pretty darn cool, given that ultimately nobody was injured. I apologize for the quality, but here are a couple of photos if you're interested. Yes, we're always interested in photos from our listeners, Seth. He says, "Anyway, that's just my account, so I figured I'd share with you and the crew. Thanks for putting on the awesome show, and I look forward to the next episode. Best wishes, Seth." And so he included some pictures of something that the last one there has. He wrote in aircrew and has some arrows pointing down to it. So I guess if you zoom in, you can see the aircrew members running away from this black smoldering thing.
Ball of fire.
Yeah, ball of fire on the runway, or just to the side of the runway. Yeah, that's cool. We talked about that incident, Captain Nick. You were telling us about that particular version of the F-18, the EA-18.
Yeah, the Aussies have got some Super Hornets, Growlers, and this one looked like it suffered a catastrophic engine disintegration during the takeoff run. Guys did a very good job to not abandon the aircraft. They managed to keep it safely on the ground and reject the takeoff, and they looks like they jumped clear and took a suitably fast exit stage left in order to separate themselves from the burning machines. Just as Seth says, very sad to see such an expensive and vital piece of equipment just burning away there.
And didn't we say on the last show, or the last time we talked about this episode or this incident, that they thought that that Australia was going to try to get some reimbursement or something from the...
Yeah, I haven't heard any more about that.
Yeah.
I've got a few contacts, but no one said anything. So I'm guessing that's all happening behind the scenes.
Most likely. Probably best not to air that dirty laundry.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Seth. And we're happy to have you on board.
Absolutely. Is he a Sith Lord? I don't know.
Not Seth, a Seth.
Oh, Seth Lord.
I'm pronouncing that
Seth.
as well. I mean,
Right.
do we... Okay.
I just wanted to ask him what color his, his
Lightsaber. Lifesaver.
Yeah.
his saber was. Yes, exactly.
All right. Let's move on to number 2. Our producer, Liz, put this in the feedback folder, thinking that we'd cover it just because she's the producer.
Skip it.
I
And
think
she
we're
was right.
obliged.
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and cover it because she's our producer. She says, Acme's sister airline insists in returning some movie history to its rightful place. Too bad they didn't fly Acme. No kidding. They went with our sister airline, Delta, instead. They say there's no place like home. And after 13 years missing, Dorothy's stolen ruby red slippers are finally back in their rightful place with a little assistance from Delta. Wednesday evening, July 11th, Dan Welcome, Operations Service Manager at Minneapolis St. Paul Airport, received a call with a mysterious request from the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI. I was told the FBI has a unique situation, he says. 2 agents would be taking a short trip the next day from Minneapolis to Washington, D.C. and back, and carrying a large, high-value object that couldn't go in the cargo hold or in the overhead bin. They needed to be seated in the same row with an empty seat between them for the package. I had no idea what it was, just that the FBI needed to be in constant contact. Welcome coordinated seating arrangements for both flights with help from Global Assistance in Atlanta. He also worked with airport customer service in Minneapolis, St. Paul to ensure there were no issues during boarding and contacted in-flight service, so the flight attendants were briefed in advance. Mike Robles, one of the flight attendants on board, remembered the trip. He says, they pre-boarded with the package and I offered them coffee and snacks. They told me they had been busy traveling in the last few days and were transporting a high-profile package. It was in a box with a fragile sticker, fragile, and highly guarded. Dana Weber, another flight attendant, said the agents let her guess what was in the box. They told me to watch the news in the coming weeks and maybe I would figure out what it was. Months later, on September 4th, the FBI revealed that the iconic red slippers from The Wizard of Oz, stolen in 2005 from the Judy Garland Museum in her hometown of Grand Rapids, Minnesota, had been recovered in a sting operation that ended in Minneapolis. During that July trip to D.C., the slippers had been transported to the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of American History, where a second pair has been on display since 1979 for comparison. Delta learned a few days later exactly what had been on board those 2 flights. Flight Attendant Samantha Taylor, let me try that again. Flight Attendant Samantha Taylor said the airline and its people truly do play a part in the extraordinary. We fly so many different law enforcement officers, political figures, and celebrities that sometimes I think we are accustomed to not being surprised. But I would never have guessed Dorothy's slippers were in a package safeguarded by the FBI on board. Not 1, but 2 flights I worked. FBI officials told Delta they were appreciative of the quick accommodations for the special request. Welcome said it was part of the job and he didn't think twice about it. What a priceless moment for Delta, he said. Although it took far more than 3 clicks of the heels to bring an end to a 13-year mystery. Oh, I see what they did there. Weber is glad to finally learn its outcome. It's great knowing that such an important piece of culture is safe and where it should be. And that was from...
Well, hang on a minute. Shouldn't it be in Kansas?
Well, yeah, you'd think so.
I think so.
Why are they taking it to Minneapolis?
And then Grand Rapids, of all places.
Yeah.
Oh, I know why. Because Grand Rapids has great beer, craft beer.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. So
I don't even like beer, and I think it's delicious.
yeah,
I don't. That's a good question. I'm not sure why Grand Rapids is the museum for the Judy Garland. Maybe Judy Garland is from Grand Rapids. I bet that's the reason why.
Hometown of Grand Rapids, Minnesota. You're getting that
well,
confused.
it does say her hometown of Grand Rapids. But
Oh, I'm thinking
Minnesota.
Minnesota. Oh, I was saying
So the slippers went to the Smithsonian in Washington.
no,
they
well,
went
they
to-
took them there to compare them with the other pair to make sure that they were genuine.
Yes,
That was the reason for the journey, but they were going to end up in Grand Rapids.
that is correct.
God, I'm drunk, and even I knew that.
Dana, you need to pay attention.
I'm reading it back here, and
Reading comprehension, C.
Yeah, that's okay. Take a stripe away.
no. See, that's why I'm getting confused. Grand Rapids, Minnesota.
I know. I'm sorry. I just said Grand Rapids, but
Minnesota.
Minnesota. But I don't think I said. Did I say Michigan? I don't know. We'll see.
Maybe you did.
Anyway, but yes, Captain Nick is correct. They went to D.C. to go to the Smithsonian to compare it with the other pair to make sure that these were authentic. And then they went back.
So, what's the most expensive thing you guys have ever flown with on your aircraft?
Millions and millions of dollars from the Brinks truck.
Ah,
Yeah, I've had a few tons of used banknotes. I must admit, in gold bullion,
But all all honesty, the most valuable thing I've ever flown was actually into Grand Rapids from Minnesota, Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I'm trying to remember his name because I'm terrible with names. But I'll remember it. We flew home a World War II private that they had found after all these years, and that was just less than a year ago.
yeah,
I
I remember
think,
you telling us about it on our show.
yeah, it was on the show. So I think that is far more valuable than anything anybody could ever carry.
sure, I understand that.
I think I don't know how valuable the ancient Chinese instrument was that we transported and ended up breaking into little pieces.
What?
I don't want to talk about it, but it was not a good day for Acme.
Uh-oh.
They were rushing to get the door closed. I think it was either at LaGuardia or Kennedy. I forget which. I think it was
It was a
Kennedy.
Ming vase.
They had flown all the way from China and they were going to Atlanta for some kind of a concert, and they were using these heirloom, like authentic heirloom instruments, Chinese instruments. And they said, well, we don't have any room for their bags. And I wasn't aware of any of this. And they said, well, we'll just, we'll have to check these or gate check them. And apparently the baggage handlers didn't do a very good job. And the guy opened up the case when we got to Atlanta, and it made me want to cry, actually.
Oh no.
And of course we couldn't really communicate with the guy because he didn't know English and we didn't know Chinese, and it was a big mess. It was not good.
No.
So anyway, let's not dwell on that.
Peter Mason Counter was his name.
Okay.
I had to look it up. I'm sorry.
Oh,
we have to get our accuracy above 50%.
Yeah.
Is there a reason for that?
What, for accuracy or?
Well, why we need to be above 50%? I'm quite happy with
HR's not here to keep us in line.
Yeah.
The girls away, the boys must play.
Speaking of accuracy, Liz sent a little message in her little private chat. She said, I did say Minnesota. I did not say the other one. So,
oops.
Okay. You know what? That was horrible. Thank you, Liz, for sending that in. Let's see. Number 3, Andrew has a follow-up. Oh, Andrew was the one, speaking of accuracy or lack thereof, that told us about his journey from Canada, Vancouver Island or something like that, in British Columbia to Belize. He was flying a Cessna 182. Remember we talked about the age? I think it was 1956.
We wonder why he went the route he did.
Yeah. He took a weird route, and we were wondering why. And he wrote in after we talked about it and said, thanks for the feedback feature. As you all were wondering about my chosen route from Canada to Belize, I thought I would clear that up. I did originally flight plan through Mexico as per my employer's request. But when he discovered the landing and overflight fees through Mexico, he opted to go via Florida and the Gulf instead. I landed in Cozumel, Mexico on my return flight to Canada, as my departure from Belize was too late in the day to make the trip across the Gulf day VFR. The plane was only certified for day VFR. I believe the one landing in Mexico cost somewhere around $2,000 in total fees.
Good Lord.
Also, the plane's year was 1956, which is the first year that they made the 182.
Well, I never.
And he says, thanks again. I've included a couple of pictures from my current flying location, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Andrew. And he is flying a Caravan. He has some photos here. We'll include a link to his feedback in the show notes so you all can look at them as well.
Yeah, nice sunset picture there.
Very nice.
And a nice picture of the Caravan standing on its ear.
Yeah, well, I guess maybe I'll rotate that so it doesn't look like they're doing a vertical takeoff. I think this is one of Elon Musk's SpaceX rocket.
Yeah.
No, that's not.
Yeah.
No, never mind. Okay, thanks,
It's ready
Andrew.
to launch.
Yeah. Tom says, oh, we were talking about monitored approaches on an earlier episode. He said possibly flogging a dead horse, as Captain Dana would say. But please see attached feedback on monitored approaches and a link to a very good explanation on Cat 3 from Mentor Pilot. For what it's worth, I think it's a very interesting procedure with its own merits, even in good visibility conditions. And let's see, clear skies, TUV, tailwinds, and unlimited visibility. Oh, okay. Tom Harris. So he sent a link to that YouTube video, the Mentor Pilot, where he talks about their company's monitored approaches. Of course, in the case that he's talking about in the video, it's a Category 3A procedure, and I believe they use Autoland in their 737s there. Now, there are some airlines like ours and I believe American Airlines where they have the HUD and they have a special clearance to perform low vis, I think Category 3 with the HUD and
That's
actually
correct.
manually flying the airplane. But not exactly the situation that we were referring to which we were referring in that episode, because we were talking about monitored approaches in general, not necessarily the Category 3 types. And let's see, I have something here, some audio. So maybe it's his attached feedback. So let me see what happens when I hit the play button.
Hi, APG crew, Tom Harris here again. Just responding to, there's actually a bit of feedback in the last episode, 339, which I've just caught up on, from Simon regarding monitored approaches, which reminded me, I know it's feedback on top of feedback, but it just reminded me of a video I watched from a YouTuber that I'm a very big fan of, goes under the name of Mentor Pilot, and I've included the link to this video. Now, admittedly, the video is on the subject of Cat 3 auto lands, which I believe is, which I assume is slightly different to what we're talking about here, but I think the principle still applies. Now, I will reiterate, I'm not a pilot, but this was something that I took an interest in when I watched the video and thought was a very interesting procedure. And like yourselves, at the time it seemed a bit odd, the concept of taking over controls so close to landing. But actually, the way Mentor explains it, it kind of makes sense. So the principle being the pilot flying, which would be the first officer, flies the approach down to the minimums or the decision height, at which point the captain makes the call, and he'll be looking out the window, looking for visual cues, and he'll make the call to either go around or land. And if it's a land call, then the captain takes over controls, or the and lands the aircraft. And if it's a go around, then the pilot flying, which would be the first officer, performs the go around and then the subsequent missed approach procedure. And something in the video that I've included struck me, and kind of made the whole procedure make sense. And that is that it allows the first officer, the pilot flying the approach, to focus on one thing only, and that is the go around. He's flying the approach. He'll get down to minimums, and in his mind, he is always going to fly. He or she is always going to fly. He's always going to go around. Cue music, Captain Jeff. And there's no question in his mind. That is what he's doing, and that is what he's focused on. And he will have the go around and missed approach procedure in his head, and that's all he's got to concern about. Whereas the captain can focus on looking outside for visual cues, and will then his job is to perform the landing if the conditions permit. which kind of reinforces the principle that every approach should, in my mind, that every approach should be flown to a go around, and if you land, then that's if you get to land, then that's an added bonus. Anyway, I think the video explains it all pretty well, and perhaps it can be included in the show notes or whatever for people to look at. As I say, I think he's a very good at what he does, this mentor pilot, and I think he's well worth checking out if you haven't done so already. I'll leave it at that, and yeah, clear skies, tailwinds, and unlimited visibility. Cheers, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Yes, I have seen Mentor pilot. Is it Mentor or Mentour? It's Mentour, and I'm thinking maybe that's another odd English/Canadian spelling of the word mentor. But while he was talking there, listening to his audio feedback, I did a search online, and I could not find. The only thing I could find for a mentor is Mentor pilot. So I don't know what that Mentour means, but it would make sense if he is like the pilot that is the mentor to other people wanting to be pilots out there. But what do you think about that? I don't really care about the monitored approach thing, actually. I'm more concerned about the word mentor.
Mentor. Is that a British way of spelling it, maybe?
I don't think so, but maybe Captain Nick or Liz, our producer, can enlighten us. What do you think, Captain Nick?
I don't know. It might be a play on words. Mentor is, I would normally spell it TOR. So
TOR.
Yeah, I don't think there's any difference. But I mean, the points he raises.
I don't want to talk about the points he raises. I want to talk about.
This is an aviation show, spelling show.
Yes. Well, I'm going to turn it into one. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, Owen brought it up perfectly. Mentor.
A tour of men.
Tour. Yes.
Okay. What did Liz just say? She's communicating with us from beyond.
Yeah, she says we spell mentor MENTOR.
Okay. All right. Well, whatever. So I guess we need to talk about monitored approaches. Go ahead.
No, we don't, because we're going to get more later. But the fact is that the procedure still relies on a handover control at minimums, assuming that's when you get visual, which doesn't give the handling pilot, the guy that's going to do the landing, much time to get to grips with the wind and the conditions, etc. So if I was the pilot who was going to do the landing, I'd prefer to fly most of the ILS myself. I don't think the procedure allows for that. I think the procedure means that the pilot that is flying in whilst the aircraft is in cloud, India Mike, has to stay in control of the aircraft, and then he hands it over when you're visual. And if that occurs at 200 feet, I don't think it gives you a lot of time to get to grips with what's going on. And the other thing is that both pilots should be completely au fait with the go around and know how to fly it. And I don't think there's any advantage in having one pilot concentrating on flying the approach and be prepared to do the go around, because both of you should be prepared to do the go around. And if you're not prepared and able to do that, then you shouldn't be sitting in either seat.
Good point.
Well, and I agree with you on that, Nick. Both pilots should be qualified and ready to go around. And that's really the intent of a monitored approach. Back when I was at the regional level, the monitored approach, because the only way we could get in anywhere was Cat 2, and we did not have the ability to do an auto land. So really, if you take what we do at Acme and amplify that a little bit, really, whereas the captain is looking outside, looking out for lights and trying to pay attention to be able to get some type of visual cue to be able to land the aircraft or continue the approach. The first officer's job at Acme is, of course, to stay in the airplane, monitor the aircraft, and be primed and ready to go missed approach. Either pilot's ready to go missed approach, but the pilot monitoring at this point is the captain and looking outside for visual cues. And the first officer, his whole goal in life is to go around until the captain calls, I have the aircraft. So the reason for the monitored approach, I'm imagining in this case, is that it's the way we do it at the regionals without the autopilot assisted landing to a Cat 2 minimums or Cat 3 if you're on HUD, I would imagine, because I don't think you can do Cat 3 without a HUD. So
right.
that may explain why there might be a little confusion there in the monitor approach. The captain really is just geared to take over the aircraft because they don't have visual and they shouldn't be flying the airplane right down to minimums in that case, down to such a low 100-foot minimums.
I disagree with that premise. I think taking over control of the aircraft at 100 feet is a very poor procedure. I think the pilot flying the aircraft should remain in control, should fly it down, and if you don't get visual 100 feet, you go around. But the fact is that you have got the aircraft under control. You've established the drift. You know what kind of wind conditions, how bumpy it is, how much the throttle is moving, and you're well established because you've been doing it for the last few hundred feet. If you suddenly grasp the controls at 100 feet and are then expected to assimilate all those variables in the last few seconds it takes to take the aircraft from that visual point put on the runway, I don't think you're in the best place. But I will say that it is a matter for debate, and obviously some airlines think that's a good idea, and many airlines don't. There aren't many airlines that do monitored approaches.
Right. We don't do it at Acme either.
And we don't do it at Acme. It's just at the regionals. And the real reason that they do the monitor approach is because the autopilot is not capable of taking the aircraft down. So the monitor approach is just actually very much like what we do at the main line, and that is that the first officer is the pilot flying per se with the autopilot on to minimums. So there's really the captain is there ready to take the aircraft. The first officer in either one or two things: land the aircraft if they get visual, or if we get to minimums or go visual at some point and decide that the runway environment gets lost or is not satisfactory, that the captain at that point is taking the aircraft around. If the first officer is on the autopilot monitoring all the instruments, just like we do at Acme, the first officer is monitoring the instruments. The captain is actually outside looking for the runway. There's really no difference there. The first officer is flying the autopilot. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
so you've got the autopilot.
I'm flying the airplane. The autopilot is engaged. I am flying the airplane. I have my hands on the controls, following what the autopilot is doing. The first officer is over there monitoring all the in-flight instrumentation, and while the autopilot is flying and it's all hooked up and I have all my hands on the controls, I'm not looking at my instrumentation. I'm looking out the window for the approach lights and the runway environment.
Exactly.
And then if I see what I need to see, then I let it do the auto land. If I don't, then I initiate the go around, and the whole time I am the one flying, not the first officer. I see what you're trying to say, Dana, but I think it might be confusing to people that they think that the first officer is flying the airplane. He's not. He's just monitoring. He or she is monitoring.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of, all right, you get to minimums, and captain calls, the first officer calls minimums, and if the first officer doesn't hear the captain say, "I've got the airplane," and clicking the autopilot off, okay.
Now we're not talking about autoland. Now we're talking about a different kind of approach.
No, it's a monitor approach, because at the regional level, if you have an airplane that can only shoot a Cat 2,
we're confusing things again. So I thought you were talking about our procedure at Acme. Now we're talking about the religion.
I'm comparing them.
Okay.
I see the difference in the regional. It's a means to an end, because you can't do an auto land because the aircraft's not equipped. You still want to be able to take down a Cat 2 minima. So this procedure has been developed. Yeah. Okay.
And it's very,
in my mind, that's a bit of a fudge to get below Cat 1 minima, because really, honestly, if you haven't got auto land and anything special, you shouldn't be going below Cat 1. If you want to invent, or if the FAA wanted to allow airlines to go below Cat 1 minima and invent a procedure to do it, I personally would go, whoa, you shouldn't really be doing that.
Well, at Acme Airlines, when I flew the 727, we did not have Category 3. We did not have Autoland, but we were allowed to go down to Category 2. But we did it just as we're doing it now. The captain was flying the airplane through the auto flight system, and he or she was the one to make the decision to go around or continue to landing. And so, there is a way to do this without doing the workaround or the fudge or whatever you call it, doing the monitored approach thing. I think it's not necessarily designed to, as a loophole to get below a Category 1 minimum. I think it's more just a philosophy of how an airline decides that this would be the best way to do it. I mean, I can see good things both ways. However, having never experienced, as Dana has at the regional, the other way of doing things, I'm not really sure I'm qualified to say which one is better. I can just say,
and that's exactly not my point. And I'm not saying which one's better. I'm just trying to relate how the monitored approach, when you don't have an auto land, and the way that we do it at mainline versus a regional aircraft that doesn't have auto land. The way we do it at mainline, it's still the captain making the call, and the whole purpose is for the pilot that is flying the airplane, who is doing the monitoring, okay, is inside, not looking outside at all, whereas the captain is looking outside because the aircraft is not capable of doing auto land. It's going taking it down.
I don't think that's any great advantage. If you're scanning your instruments and scanning for the lights, I really don't see that as being a problem. I can move my eyes between the instruments and the outside world and keep a perfectly good scan going, waiting for the lights to appear. I can watch my instruments, so I can look outside, I can watch my instrument, look outside. I don't see any point in me just staring out of the window and losing complete track of what's happening on my instruments while someone else does that job. I would be looking at my instruments anyway. Even if my job was to look for the lights, I would still be scanning my instruments, glancing outside, scanning my instruments. So I would probably be doing exactly the same as I always have done, even if I was playing the part of the captain who was looking out the window, looking for the lights. Because, geez, it's not like they suddenly appear in a blink. They emerge in a few seconds, and it's very easy to pick them up. You're either going to get them or you're not.
Down to 100 foot, Cat 2 minimums. The lights are going to come up real quick if you're going right down to minimums.
Well, they're going to come up at the same speed they would anyway. As soon as you break cloud, in any day, if you've got an overcast layer, they're not going to appear any quicker because the cloud base is 100 feet than they would if they were 200 feet. You're just a bit closer to the ground, that's all.
Well, you know what? I'm wondering if what Captain Al would say about all this monitored approach stuff.
No, good point.
You think that we... oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Let me see. Let me hit this button here.
Al, we were talking about monitored approaches on the show the other day, and you have done some. So what's it all about?
Indeed. At my previous airline, Monarch Airlines, we, for a while, until we adopted pure Airbus SOPs, had a procedure whereby if the cloud base was below 1,000 feet, then we would do monitored approaches. So let me explain in as much as I can without overcomplicating it. The person who would be flying the approach would not be the person who would land the aeroplane. Now, what I'd like you to do is imagine that you're doing a non-precision, or to use the modern expression, 2D approach to an airport where your final approach track is offset, say, by 12 degrees to the runway. So you're coming in at an angle. Now, and then I want you to imagine that the weather is right on minimum for that approach. So when you reach that point where you have to decide whether you're going to land or go around, you're having to find visually the runway because you're offset, the wind might be affected. So you're trying to build a picture as to where that runway is. Now, the guy who is pilot monitoring for the approach, whilst monitoring, can be looking out. And therefore, the idea was that when the cloud base was below 1,000 feet, or in our particular case, when visibility was less than 3 kilometers, the person flying the approach would just concentrate on flying the instrument approach. And they were effectively programmed to go around if, at any point during the approach, the guy who was monitoring didn't say visual, I have control, or indeed they reached the decision altitude. Now we would convert non-precision approaches into a decision altitude. We had the approval for that. So when you got down to DA, pilot flying, the approach would call decide, and if there was no decision to land, then it was go around. But what it did is it allowed the pilot monitoring to really concentrate on monitoring and looking out, which made finding the runway a lot easier in marginal conditions. So once pilot flying for the landing had the runway, he would say visual, I have control. He would then take over and conduct the landing. If it turned into a bulk landing scenario, then he would continue to fly the go around until the aircraft was clean, and then would probably hand control back to the pilot flying for the approach. And we also did that for circling approaches, whereby sometimes you have prescribed tracks for circling, which means that the person who could fly the approach isn't able to see the runway. So you'd split the roles up, and it works very well for circling approaches, because one guy is focused on flying the circling aspect, whilst the other guy is keeping an eye out on the runway. And the idea was to try to manage the workload in those last 200 or 300 feet. And whilst it sounds very complicated, under those sort of sets of criteria, it actually worked very well. Now, some people might say, oh, well, I'd like to, hand fly an ILS or whatever. Well, that was fine. You still had that point where if the other guy became visual, he would take over. The only times that we didn't is if you had a fault on the aeroplane which affected the controllability. So it was a bit unfair for the guy to suddenly get a handful of everything at 200 feet. But yes, it did work, and it did help ease the workload in the last few hundred feet, especially when you're trying to acquire the runway. But it actually worked very well, and we also used to do it for single engine as well. And it just avoided, as we've probably often seen, where guys are heads in, flying, and then at 200 feet they look up, and the transition from inside to outside doesn't necessarily go smoothly, and all of a sudden it's 3 whites, 4 whites, and it's to avoid that I've been looking in, I'm looking out transition, where the other guy's been looking out a lot. So it's one of those things that if you've never done, you think, I'm not quite sure if I like it. Once you've had a go at it, it actually does make sense.
Okay, right. The debate is still open.
Very much so.
All right, thanks very much.
Yeah.
Well said, Al. Captain
That is
Al.
so true. What's that?
I said just well said, Captain Al.
Yeah, absolutely. But in my mind, the debate is still there, and the fact that there's no set procedure that all airlines follow means that there's still a considerable, feeling that their way is better or their way is better.
Right.
And quite honestly, in a lot of these circumstances, we just fly the procedures that the airline asks us to fly.
Yep.
And we can do either if we're required.
Exactly.
I'll just finish. Can I say one thing? I know you want to stop, but I'm going to say one thing, and that is for FAA certification. I know this for a fact. FAA certification at the regional that I used to fly for, the only way that we could actually get approved is if we went with that procedure in order to be able to fly a cat below Cat 1 minimums. So that's the only thing I'm going to say on that. It was actually an FAA requirement.
So I mean, that is one reason why some airlines do that, so that they can actually get below Category 1.
Yeah, it's for airplanes that are just not Category 3 certified.
Yeah. And then I guess at Acme with the 727, the 727 didn't have Category 3 capability, and but apparently it was certified down in Category 2, so there was no reason to do an alternate procedure to allow for us to get below Category 1. And if you're listening to this and you're not a pilot, hopefully we didn't scramble your brain too much. We're talking about instrument landing system approaches. Category 1 is kind of the standard, the benchmark approach that we fly day in and day out, and it has basically a 200 feet above the ground decision altitude, where we have to see the appropriate things to see to continue below that height or altitude to continue to landing. If we don't have any of that or whatever, everything that's required, then we perform our go around, and that's why we do this. You can always go around. And let's see. And then category 2 gets you a little bit lower, about 100 feet, I believe. 150 and 100. There are a couple different.
Depends.
And then, of course, category 3 gets you down to essentially 50 feet, or sometimes not even that. I think there are some airplanes that go to 0. Yeah. Is yours 0?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. We don't have to have any visual cues at all on landing.
That's scary.
Yeah.
I
think what we expect is one runway light once the nose wheel's on the runway.
And you hope your vector, your trajectory down the runway is aligned with the runway.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of faith.
Yes. But you got to have faith. Okay. I think we've really, really flogged that horse, that poor dead horse.
Yeah. No more monitored approach feedback, please. Not at least for a year.
And then good old Nev in the chat room suggested that we talk about electronic devices doing low visibility approaches. No, Nev. Somebody knock him out. Okay. 6. Captain Steve. Pilot mistakenly lands plane at Old St. George Airport. And this is from, let me see if I can figure this out. I can't tell where we clipped this from. No, I take it back. stgnews.com, whatever that is. Probably St. George.
St. George, Utah.
Yeah. Dixie Technical College received a surprise visit Thursday morning when a small plane touched down at the Old St. George Airport runway, only to turn right back around and fly off. Around 9:50 a.m., a plane, identified as a 1983 Beechcraft F-33A Bonanza single-engine aircraft, caught the attention of students and faculty at the Dixie Tech as they looked out the window to see the plane touch down and head toward one of the school's buildings. A single-engine plane... Oh, I'm sorry. That's the caption I should not be reading. Looking out the window, I saw the plane coming down, said Ryan Merrill, an assistant IT manager at the school, who filmed the plane's landing with his phone. He came down, touched down in the gravel because the runway has been torn up. Oops. On the video, the plane appeared to bounce on the runway after hitting the gravel as it approached the tech school's industrial building, which made some observers briefly worry that the plane was going to collide with the building. Instead, the plane slowed and turned onto what remained of the old airport's taxiway. Let me read that again. Turned onto what remained of the old airport's taxiway and took to the sky once more and took off on the taxiway.
Unbelievable.
Probably hoping that nobody was taking a video of this whole thing. After leaving the vicinity of Dixie Tech, the aircraft's pilot took the plane to the St. George Regional Airport, probably the one that he actually intended to land at the first time. St. George police officer Tiffany Atkins said the department looked into the incident. The pilot is from out of town and hadn't flown into St. George since the new airport was built. The pilot also contacted authorities at the correct airport about the mistake. A check of the plane's registry shows it originating out of Anaheim, California. No further action was taken by police due to the incident being deemed a misunderstanding on the pilot's part. Oh, I wish the FAA was like that too.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
I don't think so.
That's all very
just
well.
A misunderstanding.
Sorry. I just made a mistake.
So I landed at the wrong airport and I went ahead and took off on the taxiway. It's just a misunderstanding. You know, if you were in my shoes, you would have done the same thing. Wow. Yeah, we'll put a link to all this in the show notes. There is a video referred to here, and it is, I don't know if you had a chance to see it. I don't think our actual show notes has the video in it, but yeah, it's definitely worth, if you go to the actual article, that link there in the show notes, you'll see the link to the video, and it's pretty impressive, not in a positive way.
Oh, dear.
Let's see. We had somebody send in some audio feedback And I wasn't exactly sure what this young lady was asking. And then I decided that, and even if I did understand it, I probably, really none of us here on the panel, although we're professional pilots, I'm not sure that we would be fully qualified to answer the question. And I thought, because it involves corporate flying, I thought, who better than one of our listeners out there who fly corporate jets? Who better than them to give it a shot? And I forwarded it to a couple of folks that I thought were qualified to answer it. And Amar, yay, Amar, came back and sent some audio feedback to help us answer the question. So let me play the question first, and then I'll play Amar's answer. And here we go.
Hi, APG crew. My name is Eva Ray, and I'm interested to know a little bit more about private jet business, more specifically of how many of big airliners today offer to commercial pilots the transition from the commercial piloting to the private jet business. I'm interested very much if you can have some speaker or some discussion of what kind of contracts are involved in such transition. What kind of pressure and stuff regarding financing is involved. And I would like to know if this business is profitable. Is it maybe related to the future of aviation to be more focused on this? And what is the future of such business? I'm also curious, are many of the commercial pilots dreaming about becoming one day involved in private jet business? Is this something that is dream come true for commercial pilots? Just curious. I appreciate your answer to this question. I have also a suggestion. If you can get someone from NBAA, National Business Aviation Association, to talk a little bit more. I know they have updates all the time and discussions and all kinds of programs, but a little bit to summarize for me all of these questions, that will be great. I appreciate your show. Thanks for your attention, and I wish you all the best. Bye-bye now.
Hello, APG crew. It's Amar here with some feedback to help answer Eva Ray's questions regarding business aviation. I'm just leaving Toronto Airport on my way home after a long China trip coming in from Beijing. So excuse the feedback again. The type of business aviation that I'm familiar with and I've been involved with over the years is the corporate flight department type. That means you have a large corporation like a bank, a mining company, companies like the Walmarts, the Apples, and so on. Those companies, they own and operate their jet. And in Canada, that falls under the Canadian Aviation Regulations, Section 604, affectionately known as 604 flying. Not to be confused with flying a Challenger 604. That's the equivalent of the FAR Part 91 in the States. Now, these flight departments, they vary in size and scope. It can have a structure very similar to an airline. You'll have a director of flight operations, a chief pilot, director of maintenance, safety manager, dispatchers, crew coordinators, pilots, flight attendants, maintenance personnel, etc. The route can vary a lot, from a quick hop to New York City and back, to a pleasure trip to a remote island in the Pacific, or a 14-day business trip around the world. I think Eva asks, how many big airlines offer a transition to the private jet side? That would have to depend on if the airline operates or if it's affiliated with a business jet operator. Some airlines operate business or corporate jets. Like, for example, in Canada, Air Canada, they operate a couple of VIP configured Airbus A320 aircraft under the name of Air Canada Jets. And they primarily fly sport teams and charters. Now, those airplanes are flown by Air Canada union pilots, and that tends to be a senior role within that fleet. I also know Qatar Executive is a division of Qatar Airways, and they operate large cabin Gulfstream jets, Bombardier Global Express, and Challenger aircrafts. Now, from what I gathered on their website, they recruit, mainly they try to recruit type-rated pilots to fly their jets. So it's not very clear if you can transition between Qatar Executive and Qatar Mainline. But I guess anything is possible. So I hope that helps out with that question there. Is business aviation profitable? Well, it depends. It depends what you would consider profitable. Again, speaking from my experience and the experience that I have with business aviation, at a flight department that is very similar to our flight department, it would be impossible to move the executive team with the same level of efficiency and flexibility that they demand. In fact, some of the destination airports that we go to, they don't offer airline scheduled airline service. To a corporation like that, the jet is really a time machine. It's a valuable tool to get the job done efficiently. I think the other part of the question was, is business aviation or private jets the future? I think business aviation is growing at a fast pace, especially in China. One would think with all the technological advancements in communication that it would reduce the need for business aviation. However, from my experience, it's actually quite the opposite. Over the years, I've seen a flight department's utilization of aircraft increase. In fact, that flight department that I was referring to, they used to fly about 500 hours per jet, and now they're doing over 1,000 hours on each airplane. If you also look at some of the big manufacturers, hey, it's Amar again. Sorry, my phone died. I'm now in my car driving home. I'm plugged in, so I'm going to finish up this feedback. And I think where I left off was I was talking about the future of business aviation. Really, just one quick point there. When you look at the big manufacturers for the business jets, Bombardier, Gulfstream, Dassault, to name a few, the trend is to build bigger business jets with longer range. So I think that's where most of the demand seems to be. And then to come back to the last question that Eva sent, are commercial pilots dreaming of becoming involved in business aviation? Now, from my experience, I would say the majority of aspiring pilots dream of becoming airline pilots, simply because it's the form of aviation that we come to see the most. However, I do know a few pilots that have no desire to work for the airlines. Without getting into too much detail, jobs in the flight departments that I described earlier can be hard to come by. They often recruit from within, or you would need multiple references to even be considered for an interview. The base pay is excellent, and a lot of pilots in those roles are entitled to some sort of a bonus structure, as well as short-term and long-term incentives, excellent medical benefits, retirement, and a few other perks. Anyways, I hope that helps. Thank you very much for an awesome show, guys. Really, you guys rock. And the quality just keeps on getting better. By my count, on that last show, I think you managed to stay above the 50% mark. So by playing this feedback, I'm helping you dip below it again. Anyways, take care. Bye.
That is not true, Amar. You rock.
That was great.
Yeah, so much. Thank you so much for taking the time out, especially after flying all the way back from China. We really do appreciate all the very thoughtful answers you gave in response to Eva Ray's original audio feedback.
Yeah, and one of the only thing is I did fly corporate for a while, Jeff, and the biggest thing that I can give in addition to that is that if you compare what airline pilots do versus corporate pilots are more like chauffeurs, like limousine drivers, whereas an airline pilot's more like on a scheduled route, i.e., a bus route. So it's a little bit of a difference, like Greyhound or the local transportation system. So he did hit on the point that most pilots, when they aspire to go forward, they try to come into the airline business, but there are quite a few airline captains that retire that in our country can go fly Part 91 and do some 135 charter because they don't have the same age restriction. So that is quite common in the United States of America, at least, for that to occur, especially guys that want to or girls that want to continue to fly. So there is a life after the airlines, but yeah, I absolutely agree with what Amar said. Excellent job.
Yeah, but in my experience, the airlines don't create a path for guys to do that. It's completely up to the individual to find his own way.
Right.
Very true.
And he made used the example, I believe, Air Canada having a private jet division, or at least a small number of private jets. And I was kind of surprised when he told me, or said in his feedback, that those are flown by seniority list pilots. Now, our sister airline, Delta, owns, I think they inherited it from Comair, something called Delta Private Jets. And those pilots are not part of the Delta seniority list system. They're completely separate entities. And so if you're a Delta pilot, you can't say, you know what, I think I'll fly the private jet, side of things for a while or whatever. They're completely separate. So I guess that there are a couple different ways to do that kind of thing. As far as the people that I fly with, as Dana mentioned, sometimes when you were forced to retire, especially when the retirement age was 60, I know that there were several captains that ended up flying the Part 91 stuff because, as Dana mentioned, there was no age limitation there. And as long as they could, I guess, get a Class 1 medical, they were good to go. And I guess there are some airlines around the world also that don't have the same age limitations that we have here in the United States. And I guess EASA kind of mirrors the same age 65. Is that correct, Nick? Yeah.
You're muted, Nick.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to press the button fast enough before you guys said anything. Yeah, that's exactly right. We fly till we're 65 in this outfit, and what you do afterwards is up to the regulator authority and what you're allowed to do with, your remaining years you want to fly. Most of us feel we've done enough at 65.
Yeah.
Some people are suckers for punishment.
I think I was having a conversation with a first officer today. I don't know if it was mine or another guy that was at the outside of the gatehouse waiting for another flight, but was asking what I was going to do after I retired. And he's, are you going to, try to fly with a, some, as we just talked about, like a Part 91 type of thing? I thought, I don't think so. I think I may just do nothing.
APG.
Yeah. Well, I told him that. He says, what do you do in your spare time? And I said, well, I do the show, and it takes up pretty much every ounce of spare time that I have, other than when I'm flying my trips. And sometimes I'm doing it on trips like right now on layover here in Knoxville, Tennessee. And I said, if anything, maybe I'll, try to do even more than what we're doing now. So who knows?
There's one other thing I wanted to add to Iva and her question, and that is there's a huge difference in a lot of corporate flying, where the airlines offer a lot more stability and job security, whereas corporate flight departments can shrink or go away, or a lot of corporate flying, individual owners that own their own airplanes, i.e. we know one very famous one, Donald Trump, who owns his own airplane. But you are married to that airplane or that owner. And if that owner decides that they no longer want that luxury, of having the convenience of the airplane, then your job can go away real quick. So that's one thing that the airlines, especially here in the United States, offer over the corporate or the business flying world, unless you're in a huge flight department.
And when I was originally trying to kind of get some resources to help answer Eva's question, I found an article, Retiring Pilots Transition into Corporate/Charter Pilot Jobs, Expert Advice. And that was written in 2014. And it's got a lot of good stuff in there. So again, we'll include that in the show notes. So you can take a look at that article and kind of see some of the differences, as Dana just mentioned, between corporate business jet flying and the airline flying world.
And the real good news is, Jeff, for all of our listeners that are aspiring to become, make their living through flying, both the corporate world and the airline world are both experiencing the same indication or shortage in pilots. So the corporate flying world is opening up a lot more, and you don't need to have so many connections to get hired within that realm. If you're not going to airlines, or you decide not to go to the airlines, or for whatever other reason, but if you decide you want to fly for a living, because of the shortage, there's a lot more opportunity both places.
Opportunities abound.
Yes, excellent time to be in.
Let's talk about animals.
I'll see you guys later.
Oh, okay. No, we're not you, Dana, but like those
Animal
animals.
House?
Animal House. No. Next couple of items in the feedback have to do with animals. And the first one sent in by our producer, Liz. These wildlife species pose the greatest threat to planes, according to the FAA. Federal Aviation Administration officials have updated the protocol for reviewing wildlife hazards at U.S. airports, including a ranking of wildlife by the level of threat that they pose to flights. The rankings published in a recent advisory circular intend to guide airport wildlife management personnel and inspectors in prioritizing the wildlife that should be kept off airport property. How about all of it? The list ranks wildlife species with instances of at least 100 strikes on civil aircraft. We base this ranking on three criteria: damage, major damage, and effect on flight. Noticeably missing from this table are several hazardous species that had not been struck with the minimum frequency to allow their inclusion with the analyses, the FAA states in the AC. Brown and white pelicans, black vultures, great egrets, and other waders, as well as several species of waterfowl, raptors, gulls, and shorebirds present a significant hazard to aircraft. Although these hazard rankings can help focus hazardous wildlife management efforts on those species or groups that represent the greatest threats to safe air operations in the airport environment, care should be given to consider any hazardous species of significant mass, flocking or flight behavior, or habitat preferences. And if you want to learn more about, the top 10 or whatever it is of, let's see. I think we can touch a little bit more on it before we move.
Which is the flocking worst?
The top ranking wildlife threat to planes is not in the skies. It is the white-tailed deer, which has recorded 84 instances.
I thought it might be a gopher.
No, it's not. 84 instances of general damage to planes, 36 instances of major damage, and 46 instances of damage affecting flight, a category that includes aborted takeoff.
Poor Bambi.
I remember that what was it, last year or the year before, the regional jet that was taken off out of Charlotte hit a deer. And actually, they didn't realize they'd hit anything, except for they heard a loud thump. They continued the takeoff. And then after they took off, I think somebody said, I think the deer flew right in front of your wing and you hit it. And they had to declare an emergency and come back, and they landed safely. And Steph says she's picking up Taco from doggy daycare right now, speaking of animals. But I don't think Taco is in our list of feedback stuff.
No, he's probably down there with the gophers.
Yeah. Let's see. Second on the list of wildlife hazards is the snow goose, which has a relative hazard score of 95. The turkey vulture earned third place with a relative hazard score of 63. And the Canada goose ranks fourth with a relative hazard score of 57. I believe the Canada goose is what took down Sully Sullenberger's flight had to land into the Hudson River. Anyway, if you want to learn more about all this stuff, link in the show notes.
I want to know what the score is for a moose.
You know, you'd think that they'd have a pretty darn high score, except I guess maybe there are not that many incidents of them.
Yeah, they're not very populous. Of course, lately it's been alligators.
Alligators, elephants. Nah. Camels. Remember, we saw something in Africa where an airplane sadly
one
came into
hump
contact.
or two?
2, please. Oh, you're asking about the camel. Okay.
Yeah, no, not how many sugars in your tea.
All right. And Micah, our main man, sent some audio feedback, and we're finally going to get to it. And so he says, let's see. Should I read this first, Micah, before I play your feedback?
Is he still there?
Yeah, he's there, but it just takes some time to respond. Remember, we have a delay.
Yes.
So we'll wait. I can just edit all this out in post.
And does that mean I can swear profusely?
No, we're still online and we're still family friendly.
You could edit it out.
No, out of the audio. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about YouTube getting banned.
Oh yeah, wow.
Is Micah not paying attention?
No.
Micah, pay attention. Focus. Micah, do you hear me? Do you hear us? Are we supposed to read? Well, I don't remember exactly how I phrased the question now. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read it. Hey, lovely Liz, Jeff, Steph, Nick, and Dana. No offense meant. No offense meant. You're all lovely, but Liz is the loveliest.
Ooh.
I think Liz put that in there. After listening to the discussion from episode 340 regarding emotional support animals, I thought I would send in this off-the-cuff feedback. I did the research a while ago when the miniature horse story came up for the Airplane Geeks, but we never used it. Based on, we always get the discards, don't we? If it's not
the second-hand feedback.
Yeah, we know where your allegiance is, Micah. Anyway, based on how the federal rules are written, the airlines can certainly find a means to deny boarding to almost any animal that truly does not belong in the cabin. Note the following quoted from the Air Carrier Act. Airlines may exclude animals that are too large or heavy to be accommodated in the cabin, pose a direct threat to the health or safety of others, cause a significant disruption of cabin service, or are just plain ugly and smell. I added that, actually. This audio is strictly off the cuff, so excuse the quality. I hope you and our listener friends find the information helpful. I gave you some links, include them in your show notes. We'll do that, Micah. And yes, I do, Jen. I do. Not a lot, but not everything I say I'm going to edit out, but I do actually edit some of that stuff out. Okay. Here we go. Take it away, Micah.
Hello, APG crew. This is your main man, Micah. I just finished listening to some of the discussion on episode 340 regarding service animals and emotional support animals. And I thought I would send you this, well, kind of off-the-cuff little message to help clarify some of that information for you. The whole issue of service animals and emotional support animals can be very, very disturbing under many circumstances. And the idea of people abusing that privilege is really disheartening. But I wanted to clarify this. The American with Disabilities Act does not cover air carriers. Air carriers have no requirement to follow any of the rules within the American with Disabilities Act. However, they are responsible to cover the policies of the Air Carrier Access Act, ACAA, regarding service animals, which include emotional support animals. In quoting from transportation.gov, which is from the U.S. Department of Transportation, when asked which service animals are allowed in the cabin, it says a wide variety of service animals are permitted in the cabin portion of the aircraft flying to and within the United States. However, most service animals tend to be dogs and cats. Airlines may exclude animals that are too heavy or large to be accommodated in the cabin, pose a direct threat to the health and safety of others, cause a significant disruption of cabin service, or are prohibited from entering a foreign country. It also goes on to say that airlines are never required to accept snakes, reptiles, ferrets, rodents, sugar gliders, and spiders. The website goes on to ask, how do airlines determine whether an animal is a service animal? Well, it says that airlines can determine whether an animal is a service animal or a pet by the credible, and I'm quoting here now, the credible verbal assurance from an individual with a disability using the animal, looking for physical indicators such as the presence of a harness or tags, requiring documentation for psychiatric support animals and emotional support animals, and observing the behavior of animals. Now, it says when dealing with emotional support and psychiatric service animals that airlines can request specific documentation and or 48 hours advance notice for service animals that are emotional support animals and psychiatric service animals. Now, when going on to ask what kind of documentation can be required, airlines may require documentation that is not older than 1 year from the date of the scheduled flight, can require documentation that the passenger has a mental or emotional disability that is recognized by the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, that's a DSM, that the passenger needs an emotional support or psychiatric support animal as an accommodation for air travel and or the activity at their destination, and that the individual providing the assessment is a licensed mental health professional and the passenger is under his or her professional care. Additionally, the airline can request the healthcare professional's date and type of professional license and the jurisdiction or state in which their license was issued. So it's really very specific, and the airlines can't get sued if they follow these rules. Based on that, I think the airlines really need to require stricter documentation and not just allow any pet on board as a traveler with passengers. Hope you're doing well and look forward to talking to you all soon. This is your main man, Micah, right here in Portland, Maine, signing off.
As always, sublime. Thank you, Micah, for your audio feedback. And I like that off-the-cuff audio.
That was quite well researched, wasn't it?
Yeah, very well researched.
I'd say off-the-cuff, come on.
He downgraded our accuracy a little bit there on that one.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
All
Go
I
ahead,
can
Dana.
say is he must have big cuffs if he managed to write all that on them.
So, Dana, did you take umbrage with something he said?
I didn't take any umbrage. He corrected my understanding. I thought it was the ADA.
Oh, okay.
That would dictate as to what is defined as a service animal in regards to what we can have on the aircraft. He corrected that. So he did, in fact, correct us. So I don't think it affects our 50% down.
I don't know, but does anybody really care? I mean, we care about trying to be accurate, right? Right?
Yeah,
I don't know. I'd care if someone bought a emotional support donkey on the airplane. I'd care a lot.
Yeah, I would care too.
Anaconda.
Especially,
yeah.
Especially if, you're seated anywhere near said animal.
You ought to know better.
Okay. Thank you, Micah. No, I think that he helped bring us above that 50% threshold. We do appreciate it. Speaking of something that will just make us skyrocket ahead is this very entertaining and informative segment from Captain Steve. He calls it How I Got Here High 12. Let's take a listen.
G'day, I'm Ryan. I'm a first officer with Acme Junior, and this is how I got here. So I grew up on a farm for the first 7 years of my life, 3 hours east of Adelaide, and my aviation bug can attribute to a few factors. My grandfather, when he was younger, he learnt to fly Tiger Moth. He didn't go much further than first solo, just due to the expense of flying and all that. Second one would be my dad and his one of his mates bought a couple of hang gliders. I can remember as a kid them running off of the sand hills and maybe getting airborne for 5 seconds. The third one, I guess, was being on a farm that was quite remote and seeing the contrails of the air jets flying overhead, and also watching the Qantas adverts and seeing all these exotic locations and thinking of where flying could see me around the world and what I'd get to see and explore was also a big, I suppose, influence in looking at getting into flying. So when I was 16, I began hang gliding lessons myself, went solo and then got my novice license. Had my own novice hang glider, but there was this one time I had a few hours up and was starting to get some more confidence. So went up in my dad's hang glider, which was an intermediate glider. I took off from this 300-foot hill on the coast. Felt like, I suppose, a bit of a hump or a bit of a wiggle of the wings just as I was sort of coming into the lift of the hill. So pulled the bar in and increased the speed to get through it. But from there, the wobble seemed to induce into the speed wobbles like you get when you're first starting to ride a bike. So I continued to follow this 300-foot hill all the way down until I sort of was getting close to the ground and thought, well, I don't want to hit that. So I released the bar out, went level with the ground, and then had to go up over a fence and flare and land before getting into some power lines. That and a few other factors, I lost a reasonable amount of confidence. And so after that, my desire to fly hang gliders was definitely over. I wasn't going to be continuing on with that. Later on in high school, I applied to the Air Force. My first year out of high school, I then got invited to the flight screening program, which is 2 weeks in Tamworth, and I didn't get through that. And just with the expense of getting into aviation commercially, privately funded, I sort of put a hold on aviation, or I didn't think I'd be flying aircraft. I just thought it was out of my hands, so sort of gave up on aviation as a career and continued on with life. So my first job out of high school was a job as a labourer for a concreting company who specialised in making pig sheds for a pig farm. It was quite a demanding physically job, not that much mentally really, but I suppose the experience of working in 40-degree Australian summer heat, no shade, and just that smell of the pigs that would just hit you from as soon as you got out the car till the end of the day. And I can even remember, like, you'd be in the shower back at home cleaning, and even after getting out the shower, you could still smell the pigs on yourself. So it was time to give that up. And then I ended up at the railways, where my dad and my uncle were both working at the time, and then my brother and brother-in-law have both joined as well, and they're all still working there. It was a good job, not that much involving mentally. It was sort of at a time in life where I suppose there were some older people within my life that were going into retirement homes and nursing homes who didn't have the physical abilities to even move themselves around. Some of them, they still had their memories, so that all their waking time that they're awake, all they've got is their thoughts of what they've done with life. And I sort of put myself in their shoes and thought, what would I be thinking? And to me, I still had that strong desire to fly aircraft. And the thought that I would have is that I'd be sitting there thinking about all the things that I hadn't done and why I hadn't done it. So that was one of the, I suppose, final motivators for me getting back into aviation. Pretty much from there, I left a well-paid full-time job and applied in a university course. And I didn't know how I was going to pay for all of the flight training, but I just knew I was going to give it a real red-hot crack, see how it worked out. So in the summer months, the university had the contract for flying the Shark Patrol missions, which was flying up and down the Metropolitan Beach line at 500 feet, Cessna 172 with an observer and a communications officer looking for sharks, seeing if they were around swimmers or anything like that at all. And we had a little siren underneath that we could turn on to alert the swimmers, as well as communications to let the police know. So yeah, my first aviation job was flying up and down the coast looking for jaws. So in Australia, I guess for your first job, there's two streams. You can pack up your car, drive up north and try to find a job in general aviation, flying the scenic charter type jobs, or you can get into an instructing. And I was preparing to do the first, bought a car and was starting to get ready to go up north, and an opportunity came up to do an instructing course in Adelaide. And if that all went well, there was then a full-time job, which is quite rare to get first off. So I didn't really have an initial interest in instructing, but the thought of being able to stay in Adelaide, full-time job and a good company meant that I took that opportunity. After the end of the course, I then started flight instructing. I ended up doing that for a shade over 3.5 years. At the end of that, I was then able to apply to one of the airlines. So I got this job with the Hong Kong-based airline, Acme Pacific. Moved to Hong Kong, got myself a nice new apartment. My career was set, basically. I didn't have to move anywhere else. Did the ground school, then did the sims for the endorsement on the 777. During the sims, there were a couple of times where I started feeling a little bit sort of sick, but thought it could have just been a bit of stress or nerves and kept going. Got through that, got my endorsement, and then my first training flight was going to Zurich. And the end of my leg, I was sort of starting to feel a bit sick again. And so when I got to Zurich, the next morning when I was getting ready for the flight, it started getting quite bad in that. So I called in sick. I spent 4 days in the hotel in Zurich before I then got back to Hong Kong. From there, it was turned into what ended up being about an 18-month battle with the Hong Kong medical system and the doctors there in trying to diagnose the problem, but also then to fix it. It was turning into a catch-22 position where it didn't look like I was going to get cleared for a medical. So I then applied for an Australian medical and got that back, which I was quite happy about because up until that point, I was starting to contemplate if I was ever going to be flying an aircraft again. That's how I was being made felt by the Hong Kong medical system. But when I got my Australian Class 1 medical back with no questions, I was sure that on my side of things, everything was good. So I ended up getting my Hong Kong medical back, and the company doctors at Acme Pacific were still showing no signs of making the decision to return me to flying status. So here my flying career with them seemed to be a little bit in limbo. It wasn't definite of when I was going to get back to line or not, or if I was. But I still wanted to fly. Obviously, that's why I got into it. And I then had plenty of friends and colleagues going over to the US, flying with Acme Junior. And when they heard of what I was going through, they said that I should join and come over to the US and fly. You know, there's certainly a few things to weigh up, but in the end, I just wanted to get back in the air and fly aircraft. So I made the decision to leave Acme Pacific and apply to Acme Junior. I then had 2 weeks' notice for an interview over the internet. So I studied pretty hard for that. In the end, that was probably a little bit too much study. It was quite an informal process, really. Now, the hardest part probably of the whole application process and getting over to start the flight training with Acme Junior was the visa process, just the paperwork involved and all of the hoops and everything that have to be jumped through to get that. So once I finally did get my visa, I got it on a Friday, and I was on an aircraft on the Monday morning to the States. So once I got my visa, everything happened really quick. So far with the flying, I've certainly seen some differences in flying in Australia and flying over here in the US. Probably one of the big barriers is the language. Being an Australian part of the monarch still, we still speak the proper Queen's English, unlike over here. But apparently we speak a different language at times. There seems to be some issues with that, to one point where one of my instructors in the simmer had to get out a piece of paper and write down words to show him because he had no understanding of what I was saying. I guess another thing is the convoluted imperial measurement system. Here I am, an Australian, brought up in the metric system. But I have a new appreciation for what these Canadian aircraft who have been forced into this imperial system have had to go through. It really gives me something in common and really helps me connect with the aircraft that I'm flying. So I guess from this whole experience of starting to learn to fly and getting to where I am now, I've got I suppose a few things to look back on and give advice to other people in my situation. And it's not even aviation specific, a bit more probably in life in general. Probably the first one is perseverance. Going through all the medical issues I had in Hong Kong, certainly could have walked away from flying at any stage and got another job and forgotten about it, but perseverance and determination to keep going certainly worked out, and here I am still flying aircraft and certainly very happy about it at the same time. Where the second one is perspective. guess on those days where you've probably been delayed, bad weather, you just want to get home. It's the end of a 4-day, and you're probably not enjoying your job too much. Well, for myself, I can take a step back and look at, well, would I rather be doing this, or would I rather still be working, concreting with the pigs, with that smell in that environment? So to me, the perspective's another big one. And probably my last one would be having no regrets. So not waiting till the end of your life to do something that you've wanted to do the whole life. Basically going out there today if you really want to do it and making it work for yourself. Just get out there and do it, and she'll be right. I'm First Officer Ryan, and this is how I got here.
Thank you, First Officer Ryan, for sharing that with us, and Captain Steve for producing that wonderful segment. And
very professional as always.
I did take an exception, though. Take exception to something he said when he was talking about captains he flew with, working with pigs.
Oh, jeez.
Or did I misunderstand that? Okay. Anyway, all right. Excellent. Looks like we might be joined by Dr. Steph. She's still in the latter stage of getting home, driving home from work. And Nick, are you doing okay? You look like you're.
I'm about to pass out here.
Okay.
So
when Steph comes in, then you can take leave and go
I will
off to
just wave adieu.
La La Land. All right. Let's see. This was interesting. Matthew sent this in, and he said the title of his feedback is "Unfortunate First Flight." So he says, "Hello, everyone. Long-time listener, first time writing in. I'm writing in to get something off my chest that I feel only you all in the community can relate to. I'm currently a student pilot working towards my PPL. Growing up in the Air Force with a father who worked in the jet engine shop and then later transient alert, I spent a lot of time on the airfield with my old man. I cherished those times. When he worked for transient alert, air shows were always my favorite time of year, as I got to ride around with him in the Follow Me truck and stare at all the different aircraft that would follow us, which to the 10-year-old mind felt like I could reach out and touch them. The highlight of my youth was one year the F-117 came, and I got to drive out on the runway with my dad to gather the drag chute and throw it in the back of the truck. Because of all this, I always knew I was destined to fly. But enough about my background, and on to the matter at hand. September 10th, my wife went into labor with our first child, a boy named Toby. We were over the moon excited and anxious to welcome this little dude into the world. We went to the hospital here in Concord, New Hampshire, where the time was right. Hooked up to all the appropriate monitors. They all showed everything was going great. After about 30 minutes of being there, our doctor came in to talk to us when something no one ever expected happened. The baby's heart rate plummeted into the 30s. They should be in the 140 range. The doctor quickly rolled my wife onto her side, hoping the position change would help the baby, but unfortunately it didn't. No words were really spoken to me as they rushed my wife for an emergent C-section, or emergency C-section, I guess. I have never felt so alone. I didn't know what would become of my wife and son. After what seemed like an eternity, which was really only 15 minutes, the charge nurse came into my room with her face beaming and said, "Come meet your son." A huge weight was lifted. As I walked into the nursery with my background in nursing and paramedicine, I could tell things weren't completely right. There was a lot of commotion around my boy, Toby. The pediatrician came to talk to me and told me that although he should be okay, there were some issues. His APGARs were low, he was hypotonic, his cord gas was slightly acidotic, and Steph, where are you? And he was on equipment to help him breathe. Because of this, the decision was made to transfer him to the, the neonatal ICU, intense care unit. Is that right? Neonatal in the
Neonatal intensive care unit. That's correct.
NICU, I think that they say, at Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center, about an hour away from us in Lebanon, New Hampshire. Imagine my surprise when I heard the Dartmouth Hitchcock Advanced Response Team helicopter was coming to get him. I've seen DART numerous times flying over our house as we live 3 nautical miles from the Concord VOR. Never in a million years did I think it would be ever coming for us. The nursery just happens to overlook the helipad, and when the helicopter came in, my heart sank in time with the helicopter lowering. The team came and packaged Toby up to take him to Dartmouth. As he flew away in the helicopter, I once again had this deep feeling of aloneness. Here, my family had grown, and already our son was taken from us. And then, as I was thinking about it all, a harsh reality set in. His first flight was taken from me, a moment I had talked about with tears in my eyes to my wife while he was still in her womb. His whole nursery is aviation themed. He has little flight suit onesies and old-timey pilot's hats with goggles. My heart broke. After a 5-day stay at the NICU at Dartmouth, where he was placed on therapeutic hypothermia protocol, he was deemed perfectly healthy, and we were able to bring him home. He just had his first doctor's appointment yesterday, and they have had no concerns with him and are very pleased with where he's at. Needless to say, we are overjoyed and are feeling a love that we never knew existed. But deep down inside, I'm still saddened by the fact that I will never have the honor of taking him on his first flight. I know, it's different. That's what everyone tells me. It was a helicopter. He won't remember. It was IFR, not like he could see anything. But the fact of the matter still remains. I would like to thank all the staff at the family place at Concord Hospital, the staff at the NICU at Dartmouth, and lastly, the DART helicopter crew. Paul, the pilot, Corinne, the flight nurse, and Fitzy, the respiratory therapist. Although I may be disgruntled, you had to steal a precious moment from me. I will forever be overly grateful for your services and expertise. Paul, that was a wonderful landing and takeoff. Thanks for reading. I feel better talking about this to a group of people that I'm sure will understand my sentiments more so than who I've been talking to. Who will understand my sentiments more than those who I've been talking to. Keep up the great work on the show. You make my drives much more tolerable. Attached is a video of Toby flying away and some pictures. Feel free to share them with the community if you'd like. Many aviation cliches to you all. Thank you, Matt. And Matt Collings. And what a great story. And Matt, you know, I think we can kind of relate to the fact that as dad, you wanted to take your son up for the first time. You didn't want anybody else to have the honor of it. But I have to say, I have to agree with a lot of those people that are saying, look, that first ride in the helicopter doesn't count. That's not a taker, I'd say. What do you all think?
It's a helicopter.
It's not even a real.
It's not an airplane.
There you go.
And you weren't flying it.
Oh wait,
so, hi.
what? I hear a lovely.
My voice has changed. It's broken at last. Oh no, it's the other way around.
Jeff,
hi.
Welcome. I'm
Thanks.
glad you made it home.
Me too. Wasn't sure that was going to happen today. Thought I was just going to have to be at work permanently.
A rough day at work.
It was long. Yeah.
Lots
of little annoyances all day long that just add up to extra time.
Well, Steph, you want to catch up with Steph? I'm going to take my chance to ease away. And,
good night, Nick.
It's tag team.
Guys.
So Nick is virtually tagging Steph, and Steph's going to take over. There we go.
Okay, Steph, you have control.
Yeah, I have control.
Good night, Nick.
Good night,
Positive
guys.
exchange of.
Thanks, Nick.
Good night, everybody. We'll
Catch
see
you
you
on
guys
the
later.
weekend. Bye.
Bye. Have fun. I'm out of here too. Now we can.
Oh, I was like, where are you going? Has that affected everyone today?
And I'm going to. No,
yeah.
Just
all right.
Show's over.
Show's over. Glad I made it.
No, we always are joyed when you are able to be on the show with us, Steph.
And my apologies. I really thought I was going to be home at, a reasonable hour today, meaning like 4:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And it's now almost 7. So
The best laid plans.
sometimes life is like that, right?
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Sure is.
Like a box of chocolates. So we were reading this one from Matthew about his son and having some issues, some concerns during delivery, and they decided to do the the safe thing and take him to another center, Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center, which I guess probably is better equipped to handle some of the needs his son had. And I was trying to pronounce some of these things that he was throwing at us.
I did. I missed your reading of. I heard you start the very beginning of it, and then I missed the
did them
majority.
all perfectly, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. What was the? I don't.
I'm trying to scroll through here and see what.
I don't see any questionable words here.
I know
Apgars?
you don't. Apgar, I got that.
Okay.
It was something about his blood level. It looks like at first I was going to read it as acidic blood, but it was acidotic.
Acidotic.
Yeah. Have you heard of that?
Where are you?
Well, I'm trying to find it. Nice. I can't see.
I don't see it either.
I should have. Highlighted them.
Oh, it's probably.
Oh, here we go. His Apgars were low. He was hypotonic. His
Acidotic.
Gas, acidotic.
Mm-hmm. So it has to do with the.
Okay.
Think of it like pH, so acid base.
Okay.
Acid alkaline. Yeah.
Well, I think I got pretty close. Oh well. I'm not a doctor.
You added an extra I in there, but that's okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Or an extra O, maybe.
So what do you think? I mean, you think that this first flight, that was really his first flight? I mean, it wasn't with Dad.
Well, I think you could just apply an exception to it.
I think so. Just like the stats that they have for like the Hall of Fame.
Just put a little asterisk
there to say.
Like, yes, it was your first flight, but it was 100% necessary in this situation. There, if you hadn't taken that flight and something had come of it and it was a different outcome, then that's not worth taking the chance at all. So,
right.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Okay.
And you know what? Like everyone else had said, he's definitely going to enjoy that first flight with you, Matthew. I have no doubt about that.
Unless you're not a very good pilot, and then he might be scared to death. Just kidding.
Being your child, though, they'll probably judge all your landings and give you grief, and but all the stuff that you want in a good way.
People that you love.
All the people that you love, they just nothing but complimentary.
Yeah.
Jeff knows this firsthand.
That's a good one
from his friends.
That's a good one. Okay. What do you think we play this audio feedback? Now it's almost 12 minutes long, but it's from our good friend and APG community member, Steven. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about where he is in his training. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd be curious to know.
Me too. Here we go.
Go for it.
Hey, APG crew, Stephen Ivy, the airline pilot in training. Actually have some time to leave some feedback of where I'm at with all my training. So I started about a month ago now with training with the airline I'm going to work for. It started out with this ATP CTP course, which is basically satisfying the requirements of the ATP certificate, the airline pilot nowadays. The course itself basically consists of a ground school portion and a simulator portion. The ground school portion is covering basically jet aerodynamics, high altitude aerodynamics, and the issues that come from all that, some general airline operation stuff. The course itself is supposed to be non-aircraft specific, but the airline I work for kind of throws in some bits and pieces that pertains to the aircraft you're going to be flying. So the ground school's 5 days of classroom training, and then there's a test at the end that covers everything that you went through in the ground school. And then the next 4 days, you have a simulator training, which is in... it can be in any aircraft, but I was fortunate to have my sims in the aircraft I'm going to be flying, the CRJ series. So we had 4 days of sims, and they're basically just going through some basic maneuvers, taking off, landing, shooting an approach, high altitude stalls, and low altitude stalls, wind shear, wake turbulence, and then some general emergency stuff. So once you get through with all that, you start NDOC training. The first day is basically going through company history, human resource type stuff. And then you get your EFB, which, well, it's not much of an EFB, but it gets the job done. We have a Microsoft product here at the airline I work for. It works. That's about as much as I could say about it. Also, that first day, they go through your logbook. So this is kind of interesting. I did all mine Part 61, so I didn't really have a lot of other things I needed other than just my logbook and my certificate and other things. But the 141 guys have to have a sealed certificate of completion of a aviation course from their school. So a couple guys had to scramble to get that in from their schools. And also, some of the guys had some simulator time, which I found out, and I probably should know this, but I didn't have a lot of simulator training when I was doing all of my flight training, so I guess it didn't really matter too much. But you have to have the FAA authorization letter for that sim. So, like, if you do your training at Flight Safety or another major place, they usually have a book with the letter right at the staircase that goes down to the sim. So you got to make sure you have that if you're going to be logging any kind of simulator time. It's going to count towards your certificate. So if you're in a 141 school and are in a full motion sim and all that, you've got to have that letter of authorization, a picture of it, or a copy of it for your hours to count your logbook. So after that, NDOC is is a week. It's 7 days long, and it covers basic operations inside of the airline, different rules and regulations that revolve around 121 stuff. Also covers the exemptions that the airline I work for had, so some relief from certain weather minimums and things like that. Also went through some company specific stuff as far as approach plates and stuff. Airline I'm going to work for goes into some tight airports that are in some mountainous areas, so they've got special procedures and stuff for going in and out of these airports, and their plates are a little bit different than a regular Jeppesen plate that most people use. So go through all that, and then there was a test at the end of it, and made it through that. Then after that, they give you about 40 hours of CBTs, which covers systems on the CRJ aircraft that you've got to go through, and also start memorizing limitations for it. So then that following Monday, so NDOC ended on a Wednesday after the test, and then they give you all weekend to go through the CBTs. And that Monday, you start the ground school portion, which is actually going through the company's operations manual and figuring out the different phases of the flight and everything, what you can do in this phase, what you need to do here. So in the mornings, you would go through one step. So you would go through like the pre-start sequencing or the engine start, so on and so forth. And then in the afternoon, you go to a matrix simulator, which is a basically stationary sim that's got the mock-up of the CRJ, where you can go and push all the buttons, learn your flows, and see what happens when you push a button, how the system reacts and the aircraft reacts and all that. Then after that, you had another session in the afternoon, which was a FMS lab, so learning the program, the flight management system, the little box that you do all your flight planning in and everything, get your performance numbers, and learn to fly with it. So that went on for about 2 weeks, and had a test. Well, actually had 3 tests. You had a FMS validation showing that you could actually use the FMS in the way you needed to. Then you had a matrix test to see how well you've learned all the procedures and the flows and stuff. Then you actually had the written test on Friday, which basically determined if you could move on to the next step or not. And I passed it, so I was able to advance. And then now I am out of ground school and then the simulator part, which I guess is technically part of ground school, but moving on to simulators. So the first total sim footprint's about 3 weeks long. The first week, you're in a fixed-based sim, so it's got the mock-up like the Matrix, but it's actually got a real FMS. It's got real throttle quadrant and a real autopilot control panel. So you're actually flying, but you're not feeling the motion. You're not, you're not seeing stuff outside. You're not taxiing and all that. But it's meant to get you ready to move on to the actual full motion sim. So refining your procedures, your flows, and everything as it relates to the aircraft. So I'll be doing that for 4 days, and then middle of this coming week, I will be going back to Atlanta. I was fortunate enough to get a sim slot at the simulator they have next to the Acme headquarters building. So that will be nice to be back home and all that. And then I have, I think, 3 days off. So the following Sunday, I'll start the actual full motion sims. I'll do 5 days of maneuver training and then have a day off. And then I'll do 4 days of WAF training, as they call it. So actually flying trips in the simulator between point to point, doing the whole thing you'll be doing out in the real world. And then the day after that, I have a oral validation. So basically sitting down with a guy that's going to evaluate me on my knowledge of the aircraft, the operation, and everything. And if I pass that, I get to actually go on to the check ride the following day. And if I pass that, I will move on to IOE, which will start sometime in late October. They really don't tell you where your IOE will be until you pass everything. So, but just wanted to update y'all on where I was at with training and everything and what's coming forward. And I have to say, the training's been really, really intense. I mean, I knew coming in, everyone was like, oh, it's a fire hose information. And they are very correct. It's a fire hose of information. And it's really easy to get lost in these deep, dark holes of information where you can just not learn the things you need to learn. There's stuff that you need to know right now to get you through certain parts of this training. And then there's stuff you need to know once you get out on the line flying in the real world. A lot of, well, I wouldn't say a lot, but there's a couple people in class that would get lost in these what if scenarios. And, you can't train for what if scenarios. You can train for, dealing, but sitting in a classroom all day dealing with what ifs is not going to be the best for you or your classmates going through trying to learn everything. But if you're able to discern, and the company I'm working for, they've made it really easy to do this, but discern what you need to know for the test and what you need to advance. It'll make life a lot easier. I know the company I'm working for or going to be working for, they give you a lot of study guides, go read this, go look this up, learn this, know this, stuff like that. It makes it a lot easier to go through training, even with all the information. It really does help. And that they've kind of made it to where no matter what your learning style is, you're going to be able to learn if it's reading, if it's hands-on, or if it's through watching videos. They've got a bunch of different resources to help with that. So, but hope everybody's doing well, and I'll try to leave y'all some more feedback here in the next couple of weeks after I get through sim training. Take care.
Thanks, Stephen, for that update. And a couple of the things that you mentioned brings me back, way many years ago. First time that I had the experience that you're experiencing now, and just so much stuff you got to know, and then discerning what is the important stuff and what is not. And then I think Dana, as a previous ground school instructor, can probably remember those students that you always have in every class that ask all these questions that are really not pertinent to anything
They
at all.
exist everywhere.
Oh, I know. It's just
please
like,
stop wasting your time with us. Why?
Yeah, that's completely completely true anywhere you go with anything you do. So
yeah.
Absolutely.
And it reminds me of also, knowing that, like emphasizing the stuff that you really need to know for getting through this phase of training. We used to call it the foot stomping moments, when the instructor would be saying something in the front of the class and they'd be like stomping his foot, like we go, oh, okay, that's definitely something we're going to be tested on.
Make note of that.
Foot stomp.
I mean, it's funny because you want to answer everyone's questions and make sure they're understanding, but you can tell when, especially in situations like this where you're going through very specific, like logical order of learning things, you want to focus on the basics and then move from there. So when people are asking all kinds of hypothetical and what if scenarios, it's not really achieving the objective of the training at that point, I think.
A lot of times I think it's the people that ask those questions are kind of wanting to exhibit their knowledge. I mean, like they already know the
I think
answer.
there's a sub-segment there that are like that. And then there's another sub-segment that just like to know the hypotheticals.
That's true. Yeah. And everybody rolls their eyes and goes, oh, do we have to answer that question? Can't we move on to the stuff that we really need to know, please?
No.
Hey,
hopefully a good instructor says, hold that thought, ask me after this.
Right. And then know that that's not something that is going to benefit everybody in the room.
Correct.
So Stephen, when you are back in town in Atlanta and you have a break and you have the time to drink a beer or two or other adult beverage, please call up Dana and I, and if we're in town, we'll be happy to meet you somewhere. And
absolutely, Stephen. Love to see you.
All right. Excellent. Hey, we talked about a few weeks ago, one of the there was a big news story on the north side of Boston, I believe, where some gas company overpressurized the gas lines, and these houses were like literally exploding and catching fire. We didn't know this, but one of our APG community members, Kevin St. John, was directly affected by this, and the APG played a role in helping him through it. Here he goes. Hello, Captain Jeff and the APG crew. A couple of episodes back, you played audio feedback from Arun and flooding in southern India and how the APG show helped provide a calming influence. Well, here's a second occurrence. Along with big news of Florence over the last few days, you may have heard about a natural gas-related incident in northeastern Massachusetts. This directly impacted me as I was evacuated from my house. I spent a lot of time catching up on podcasts, including some APG episodes that built up while I was away on vacation. As with Arun, it was comforting to hear familiar voices and plain tales showing how people rise to the occasion when presented with serious malfunctions. Thursday evening, I was driving home from my office when I got a notification that my home standby generator had started. I wasn't at all concerned because losing street power happens occasionally. However, shortly thereafter, I started noticing lots of smoke from a number of different places. I ran into traffic on roads where I've never seen it. I finally couldn't make any forward progress, so I parked my Tesla on a side street and walked 3/4 of a mile to my home. When I started down my street, I saw state police cruisers and lots of smoke as a house two away from mine was on fire. As I walked, people were talking about gas issues, so I immediately shut down my generator and turned off the gas coming into the house with the help of a good Samaritan walking around with a pipe wrench. You can see the house on fire in the first attached picture. We'll put these in the show notes. Let's see, where was I? The firefighters at this fire were called from Lowell, which is 15 miles away, as I later found out. Oh, 15 miles away. As I later found out, there were 3 house explosions as well as. All right, try this sentence over again. The firefighters at this fire were called from Lowell, which is 15 miles away. As I later found out, there were 3 house explosions as well as 75 to 80 simultaneous active fires in Lawrence, Andover, and North Andover. This completely overwhelmed the 3 communities' fire departments, and evacuations were ordered. The call for help went out, and I saw fire engines and ladder trucks from York in Maine, man Micah's home state, and from Sharon near Captain Dana's old stomping grounds. Both of these are 70-plus miles away. I saw police and fire team work at its best. They had a mission, and they were carrying it out. These explosions and fires are presumed to be the result of overpressurizing natural gas lines. The official probable cause will come from the NTSB. It is now Sunday, and the evacuation order was lifted this morning. I'm back in my house, and I have electricity, but no gas. I can cook, but have no way to heat my house, which, if this isn't fixed quickly, is going to be a problem next month when the temperature drops below freezing. I've attached some pictures. The first shows the active fire. The second and third show the burnt house the next day. The fourth is a panorama showing my street with the burnt house and my house at the far right. The fifth and final picture shows the NTSB accident investigation team using a drone to gather video evidence. Sorry for the long feedback, but I wanted to thank all of you for these wonderful episodes that kept me distracted as I waited for the crews to inspect my house for damage. So I'm wishing you clear skies and winds appropriate to your phase of flight. Respectfully, Kevin St. John, a very long time listener. And thank you, Kevin. So glad to hear that you are okay and your house is okay. And thank you for sharing that with us. And we'll share this with everybody else in the community if they want to look at these pictures. Pretty
great pictures. Scary stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, not much left of the house that's 2 doors down from his.
Nope, not very
really.
much at all. Did you know
Unfortunately.
anybody, Dana, that was involved in any of this?
I've got 2 friends. Well, one's a family member, the other one's a friend, and they're both unaffected directly. Of course, they're having one of them's having a loss of gas, but very much like Kevin is. So, hoping it's going to be recovered sooner than November, because by the time you're in November in the Northeast, it's quite chilly.
Yes.
So, my thoughts are out to each and every one of them.
Yeah, and all those folks up there affected, because it's not a small group of people. It's
a large populace. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I know it wasn't very long you were with us, Steph. But
that's right. I'm happy Nick was able to go to sleep.
Yeah.
He looked like he was suffering there for quite a while towards the end of the show.
Yeah, if you're listening to the audio only podcast, every once in a while, it's kind of fun to just take a look. We include the link to our videos on the YouTube channel in the show notes as well. But take a look at this one, especially toward the end of the show before Stephanie took over for Nick. It's like out of it.
But yeah.
Poor guy. It is late where he is.
It is late.
Really.
And he is working a lot of light.
Yeah.
And those two combined, as well as hosting, people.
I'm surprised you didn't give him any really technical information to read.
I should have.
Yeah,
good.
it was
just
a really long audio. That was like the nail in the coffin. We played Ryan's audio.
I know.
Captain Steve, excuse me.
That was great audio, though. I did.
It was great audio, but I mean that was
an interesting story too. I love those.
Me too.
So
it's a great story. It was kind of like the nail in the coffin for poor Nick, because he was already tired.
I know.
Now, Steve, you know that just because you're with a new company and you're a first officer and all that is no excuse at all for not continuing to do these stories.
No, in fact, we think you should spring these on your captains now going forward, because I bet some of them have some really good stories.
I'll bet they do.
Even more, just time in a career to elaborate on.
So you've been warned, sir.
HR says.
HR says that's a demand. You can't deny that demand from Dr. Steph. All right. Well, as always, if you want to learn more about the show, be more engaged with our community, one of the best places to start out would be to head over to our website. Arash does a fantastic job of managing that site for us. And the address is airlinepilotguide.com. And we have information about the crew, the community, social media, merchandise, coffee fund if you want to become part of that, and more. And also information about the apps that we have for your iOS or Android phone, which, by the way, are free and they're ad-free. So it's a kind of a nice way to be able to watch and listen to our shows and also to send us feedback. And we're also on social media. So, Steph, can you tell us about that?
I can certainly do that. You can head over to twitter.com and type in the handle @APGcrew. That's where you'll find us. We have our individual Twitter information pinned to the top of that page if you want to talk to us individually. And if you head over to facebook.com/airlinepilotguy, you'll find community interaction there. I believe Nick and Liz do a fine job of generally paying attention to that and seeing who's asking questions and making sure we don't miss things that are posted there. And, the whole community is there as well. Lots of people sharing information, ideas, stories, news items, information on meetups occasionally. And for more on that, I'll hand it over to Hillel. Did he make it to Knoxville with you today?
Hang on. Hillel. Yeah, he's here.
Oh, good.
I think, though, he might be like Nick. He might be asleep.
Is he asleep? Oh, slacker.
Yeah. Luckily, I have a recording of him.
Okay, good.
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team. Slack is a communication, coordination, and sharing platform that works on your mobile, laptop, or browser. On Slack, we share ideas and news. We suggest episode and Playing Tales topics. We plan events and meetups. To get into the Slack team, please email me at slack@airlinepilotguy.com. That's SLACK, Sierra Lima Alpha Charlie Kilo @airlinepilotguy.com. Or send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @Hillel, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel, spelled HI11E1, Hotel India 11 Echo 1, and see you in Slack.
Thanks, Hillel. And thank you, everyone, for listening to this feedback extra show. It really helped us out a lot. We were kind of getting quite a backlog of feedback, and we thought, there's so much good stuff out there that you send us, and we want to try to play and talk about and cover as much of it as we can. And I think we did a good job of that today. We knocked out quite a bit, not everything that we had planned to do, but I think it's getting to that point now where it's getting a little bit late in the day and we're all tired. So that should really help us out. And
yeah, it was quite a few things that we've had sitting in the to-do folder for quite a while. So some of them kept getting bumped a little bit.
Acme Airline scheduling for Dana. Acme Airline scheduling.
Apparently. Pardon me.
Oh, it really is. Oh, maybe he's actually going to go fly.
Wow. That would be new. And that deserves a Dana wow.
Yeah. Where
that wasn't actually scheduling. But I had my phone muted, but I, for some reason, didn't mute my watch.
Your new watch?
My new watch. That's what was going off. I was like,
you have to
wait a minute, what's ringing? Well? I'm looking at my phone.
Oh, you know what?
It's not ringing.
I just got mine today too, and I bet it's not set up with the same sound settings. So I could have easily had the same problem. We'll forgive you this
sorry
time.
about that.
First world problem. Oh, no problem.
Yeah,
that's it's all part of the ambiance of our show.
When your phone rings and it's your watch ringing, right?
Yeah. Anyway, so with that, I'm going to say, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care, and God bless.
Cheers, y'all.
Hasta la vista, baby.
All right. That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
A wrap.
Oh, I don't know if you were able to start a recorder or not, Steph.
Yeah.
I don't think we really need it. I think everything that
I did. If you need it, let me know. It's only 25 minutes of.
Yeah, I didn't hear any Skyping at all from Steph. And if I did, I think there were a couple places earlier on in the show, and it was all from my end of the connection. I'm sure a little bit of Skyping from Dana and Nick. So
you want me to send mine over there?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Okay. If you do need mine, let me know.
I don't think I'll need it, but
okay.
If I can ever remember how to do this, I do it so infrequently. That's all right.
Once a week.
So,
Yeah.
I keep hearing like mic handling noise. Is it something that you're hitting stuff?
Mic handling noise?
Yeah, like
I'm not touching anything.
it's interesting.
And I'm not moving.
Anyway.
I have not touched. Well, I've only touched the microphone when I've had it muted.
Okay.
Because I still don't have my new one set up.
Yeah.
But I did get my office kind of clean. So step one.
I just heard it when you were kind of turning.
Is it my chair?
Ah, maybe that's it.
Hitting the cord, maybe?
Yeah, it is hitting the cord because I'd actually taken everything apart because I was going to put the new microphone together. And then I hastily put it back together. So it might be
that's
the
it.
cord. That's it. Yeah, it's the cord because I probably didn't make the connection very good there. Oh, sorry.
No problem. Just we identified it, so that's good.
Yes.
So you got the new Series 4 watch stuff?
Yeah, I did finally. After chasing UPS around for 2 days for it, because they won't deliver it if there's no one to.
Home.
If no one's home.
So, did you get the 40 millimeter?
Yeah, the smaller actually of the two.
But it's bigger than the other one you had.
No, because I had a 42 millimeter.
Oh, last time. You actually went down a little bit.
Yeah, but the other new one is 44 millimeters. So
that's
I felt like the 42 was as big as I wanted to watch for my wrist.
And I got the 44, so I really.
Well, you have a big wrist.
Big old wrist.
Yeah.
Yeah, like as it is, my wrist is.
For me, I think that if I get one, I'm going to probably get the smaller one because I have very small wrists.
Hey,
you could probably go with the 44, I would think. Yeah.
Okay.
Because actually, this is a little slimmer than the old one. Like it does actually look much sleeker than the last design.
Maybe I'll just try them on.
Yeah, just go to the store and try them on.
I would. Exactly what I would do.
Do y'all like them?
Yeah.
I really like it.
I've had mine for several years now.
And it for functionality for Dr. Steph, I think it's really good for her to have the cell phone on her wrist. But for me, as long as I always have my cell phone pretty close to me. I don't go running per se. So, I can always take a call on the wrist if my cell phone is close by. So I don't necessarily need cell service on the iWatch.
Yeah. Well, like today I'm on call. So if I go for a run and I leave my watch at home, leave my phone at home, I can actually take a phone call briefly on the watch if I needed to. So I don't have to carry it.
That makes sense for you.
Stuff. Yeah.
I think for like
that's
Dana
the only
and
reason I have it. It doesn't make it. I can't think of any other reason why I would ever need it. So
yeah, I don't think I would have done the cellular, or if I get one, I don't think I'll do the cellular part of it.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, thanks for hanging with us in the chat room. Yeah, that's what I have though, Micah, this Rolex. So that's the thing that keeps me from getting the Apple Watch is the fact that this is a lot of sentimental value or to me, because this was the watch that my mom and dad bought for me when I graduated from Auburn.
Yes.
Long time ago. 1981.
Wow. It's pouring rain outside now. I guess maybe I will not be running. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, not fun to go run in that.
All right. Well, I'm going to go and get something to eat.
All right.
Thanks everybody for hanging with us on this feedback extra. I think, what did we decide? We're going to try to do something again on
the weekend,
Sunday, maybe.
Sunday. So I should be free all weekend. How about that? I am at your disposal.
Yeah, you should be.
You should absolutely be.
Let's see. This trip, I swapped this trip. One of the reasons was so I could get back earlier on Saturday. But I do have Saturday afternoon obligation and a Sunday midday obligation. So
I'm good for Sunday morning or Sunday night.
Okay.
But midday, I've got the game from 1 to about 5.
I think I have a trip leaving on Monday morning. So I don't
even have to be up early on Monday morning. How about that?
Why not?
So, because I'm not going to be in town next week either.
Oh.
Wow.
All week.
Okay.
You're amazing.
Yeah, so you see what I got in the mail? What was this? I got this in the mail on Saturday. Got my Chicago Marathon participant guide.
Oh, nice.
Woo.
Oh, you know what? My trip on Monday morning doesn't sign in until like 10:50.
That's what time my flight leaves. 10 something.
So I guess I could do a Sunday night.
Okay.
It depends on what Nick.
Yeah, we'll see what Nick can.
Yeah,
can
that's
do.
the problem. He may not be able to do so. He probably could do a Sunday morning though.
Yeah, Sunday morning might be better. Just do another breakfast shift.
Maybe like make it 8 o'clock or something.
8 or 9.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be 7 a.m. this time, right?
Well, I do. I have to be. I have to be finished by.
Ooh, thunder and lightning too.
11:15.
Yeah, me too. About the same time for me.
Yeah.
I have no time limit on Sunday.
Okay. Well, we'll work something out. Anyway, just wanted to let everybody know in the chat room that's what we're planning.
And now you know.
Now
you have the rest of the story.
I'll be in my next trip is I have a double Newark. Yay.
Oh.
Yay. But,
actually, if you look at my flights coming up for the rest of the year, Newark is in there several
Is it?
times. Oh my God.
it's not too the flying in and out of there is not bad. It's just the transportation to
And then
get
I have
anywhere.
to take the train.
Yeah.
Actually, I might not have to. I might get a ride.
So this is interesting. We fly into Dana. We fly into Newark on Monday afternoon,
Right.
and we go all the way to Hilton Garden Inn in Long Island City.
What?
That's in Queens, I think.
Yeah. That's
and then
knocking futs.
I know. And then, but the next day we leave out of
From
Newark.
Why would you? What?
Don't wait. No.
Well,
don't
that's
they have
because
the closer in. They came up with a new scheme there.
Well,
that you're supposed to go to there's a closer in Jersey hotel that they're supposed to be sending you to.
Well, that's where I stayed last time at the DoubleTree, which is close to the airport. That's where I met up with Tanya.
How long's your overnight?
Well, I get in at basically 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Don't go back out until 7 o'clock the next day.
Yeah, that's
All right,
crazy.
so they're putting you in the mid. That's what they've done. They've put you in the mid-range hotel instead of sending you all the way downtown. They're
I know,
sending
but
you
I
over
mean,
Queens.
that's beyond
But downtown would be
I know.
closer.
I know.
Doesn't make
Queens is.
Well, anyway,
Such crap.
I think that's where I'm staying on Monday, and then Tuesday I have another long Newark, even a longer Newark, and they put us up in the Sheraton Times Square, which is a new hotel for us.
Ooh, well, that sounds nice.
And then let's see, I'll be in Orlando on. That's the reason why I bid for this trip. Wednesday, I'll get to see my son, hopefully, and yeah, and then back home on Thursday.
Very nice.
Anyway, so
and oh, by the way, Jeff, I see what you're talking about. I've now zoomed in on myself on the camera.
Yeah,
you're fuzzy.
And it is very fuzzy. So I'm going to go ahead and download that webcam settings and see if I can't go ahead and fix this somehow.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's going to get if it's going to make it any clearer though. If it's using the highest what do you call it, resolution.
Oh.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you could fool around with it. It's pretty cheap. I mean, it's like $10 for the webcam settings, which I think is very useful. It's useful for me.
Nope. Bye, Dana. Where'd he go?
Is it gone? Oh.
Yeah.
He must have disconnected the wrong thing.
He hit the wrong button. I hate when that happens. Like, I didn't mean to do that.
That's the reason why we have more than one pilot in the airplane, folks.
Yes.
Right there. No, don't touch that button.
Safeguards against user error.
Oh boy. Okay. Well,
Wow, I am tired too.
Oh,
Gosh,
I bet you are. Okay, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody in the chat room. Thanks for hanging with us, and we'll see you over the weekend. Have a great rest of your week.
Yay.
Bye.
Bye.
This one over here.
The other